Good evening, everyone. It's 6:45. We had a slight delay due to a special city council meeting due to some fiscal matters that needed to be addressed. So it's 6:46, and I'm calling the meeting of the Ordinance Committee to order. So our first agenda item, if somebody would like to make a motion.
Motion to approve the prior meeting minutes?
We have the acceptance of previous minutes before us. I'm not sure if everybody's had a chance to review them at this time, so is the will of the committee to leave them on the table?
I would rather leave them on the table.
Okay. So then we could move forward to item 2 if it's the will of the body.
Item number 2, please.
Second,
All in favor? Aye. So item 2 is ordered that the city council work to pass an operable sewer rate that lifts the burden of the budget shortfall off of the taxpayers. We have had our public hearing. We have closed our public hearing. And so at this moment, I am looking for any motion from members of the committee to make a recommendation to the full city council at the next council meeting.
Chair Bacon, do you mind, given that we don't know who's tuning in, do you want to give a very brief synopsis of some of the findings that you came away with from the public hearing?
Well, I'm open to committee members speaking to it, or, the general consensus of people who came down to the microphone, to my recollection, and anybody can jump in and add to that, was that in general, people are opposed to an increase in the sewer fee because they feel that it is already high. They've been most concerned about those people that have not been paying their sewer fees and want to make sure that we are collecting those. They seemed happy to know, and I'm not sure that there is a full understanding yet, that the city council has passed an ordinance that allows for a sewer shutoff procedure that will include the shutoff of water in coordination with our water company and our DPW in the event that people are not paying their sewer bills. So that's the backdrop, and along with that has been the reports coming to us from the financial department recommending my last recollection to what was recommended out of the department was a 60-cent increase that they felt would be not ideal, but from their point of view, adequate. And so we've heard varying opinions on that and other numbers and have received feedback anywhere from 0 to 60 to date, is my recollection.
The 60-cent increase brings us to around $6.
Correct. The current rate is $5.40.
If I may?
Sure.
I would like to
Councilor
make a
Lopez?
motion that we do not increase the sewer rate, just to go with 0, just to find out exactly how much money we raised with the new ordinance. So I would like to propose that motion.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second for discussion, sure.
Okay, so Councilor Lopez?
Well, I feel that we just passed the new ordinance. I'm pretty sure that we're not gonna get close to eliminating the deficit, but at least it's gonna bring some money in. In my opinion, I think that it's not gonna be over $700,000 or $800,000. It's probably gonna be half of that. So why should we vote 40 or 60 cents now? That's from where I'm coming.
Councilor Lisi?
Thank you. Although I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, I think that even if we are collecting 100% of the defaults, the current rate doesn't cover the current operations. And so that's why I worded the order in this way, that we pass an operable sewer rate, because I think that we need to, again, lift the burden of the shortfall in terms of operation costs off of the taxpayers and recalibrate them in terms of a user fee for sewer use.
Councilor McGivern?
$750,000 arrears is an estimate that seems to hold true every year of money that is not collected, some in a timely fashion, some because the buildings have been abandoned or it's the deadbeat landlord that we know is purposely doing it, and others that may be taking advantage of the system. I think the people I've talked to are very happy that we're making the efforts to shut water off and to go after that money for people who are still in business, for people who are still, whether it's rental property or single-family homes, still living in their homes and not paying their bills. And it's not just a timely fashion, but not paying their bills at all. When Bill was with us the last time of that 750, he says close to well over a third of it comes in late each year, the next year. So it's money that's collected from a prior year for the next year, but it just seems to come back to the same number at the end of the year. So when he's looking at his budget, that's what he knows he's not gonna collect, or that's what he uses he's not gonna collect. And it's because it's a high number, and I think that's why a lot of people here have worked very hard to get to make the efforts with the water department to give them the tools so that they can go after that money. And they're estimating, and I think they might be very optimistic, but something like a 98% collection rate, which is what the water department does. The second part is, it's not just about the arrears. It's the operation budget. The money's collected doesn't support the operations. And that's whether you agree with how the place is operated or not. It's been in the arrears from anywhere from $750,000 to $900,000 over the last 3 years, and estimated for the same amount for next year, give or take. Again, these are estimates. So what happens is at the end of the year, the auditor, because it's an enterprise fund, is forced, whatever isn't collected, to take it out of the general fund. And that leaves us less cash to use for services that the city provides directly. And regardless of what we can come to a compromise or conclusion on, I think most of us agree that we have to do something, because one, people who do have city water and do have a sewer, I think would prefer the user fee as opposed to coming out of their taxes, where that should be for police, fire, DPW, schools, and so on. And two, there's a fair amount of people in the city of Holyoke who have septic systems, and now their taxes are being paid for something they don't use. So there's two issues of fairness of why it should, and I think it's also unlawful, because it's an enterprise fund, not to change and not to make sure that the user fee brings in the operating costs. Now, we can argue a lot about what the operating costs are, and I get that, and I have no problem with that, but somewhere along the line, we need to adjust something that hasn't been adjusted for 8 years now.
Thank you. So just to give a brief review of where we are, we have a motion on the table to increase the sewer rate by 0. We've heard various comments around that, and so I don't know if there's any further amendments to that motion from any members of the committee.
I just have a quick question. I can't remember if sewer and water are billed on a quarterly or 3 times a year? Quarterly. So I'd like to make an amendment then that we increase the sewer rate by 20 cents over the next, so 20 cents for the next 3 quarters, so bringing it up to the 60 cents that's been recommended over the course of nearly a year.
Oh, so you're saying each quarter for the next 3 quarters?
Yes.
That's gonna make it hard for the, that's, if I may,
Well,
that's
we
gonna
don't
make it
have a
hard.
second to that motion
Okay.
yet, so not hearing a second, it's not really on the table for discussion. Hearing, if there,
Just back on the
Counselor
main,
Jordan?
yeah, just back on the main motion.
Well, that's where I was going.
Oh,
I thought
okay.
you wanted to speak on
Okay. What's that?
it. So you, yes.
No.
Counselor Jordan?
At this time, I would like to see how the new shut-off policy works. I think we could revisit this issue in another 6 months. I also am pleased to say that we removed $120,000 in spending out of the sewer fund and shifted it over to the general fund already with the street sweeping. So that is also going to close the gap. So I think we're getting really, really close to balance now between those two concepts. And I think we should see as it goes. I think at this point, we should do what we can to not do an increase unless we have to do an increase. And so I think we can certainly revisit this 6 months from now and continue to monitor the receipts and the collections and expenditures and see where it takes us and see how the shut-off policy, when in full swing, is working. I think that's going to make a huge, huge difference. There's also some additional expenses that could be coming out of the sewer fund as it relates to the $300,000 that's done in emergency repairs to the system. There is that component of the contract. I know a number of those dollars go to culvert repair on streets and things of this nature. That's something that used to be paid out of the general fund. That is a benefit to all people. So that's, I already know is, again, we're learning more about it. I believe I forwarded the different components of the contract now, which make up that $7 million number that's in the, no?
I don't think we have
Oh,
that
okay.
yet.
And we were able to answer the golden question about how much do they get in overhead and profit, the management fee? Yeah, long and short of it is, it's about $550,000 right now. Yeah, about $550 right now. So that's what United Suez is getting. I did want to just say, closing thought, that we did three counselors of us went down for a fantastic tour of the facility, and I want to say that those guys are doing a great job running the place, and that's one thing that's not in dispute, is that the place is being operated really well and very professionally. But there's also some other opportunities there, too, that we should also consider moving forward potentially as well. So bottom line is, I think we've made some really big changes that we needed to make, and I think we should see how those develop before we go with the rate increase at this point. But I will say, I've yet to hear a convincing argument to increase the rates by more than 20 cents in a year, though. I'll say that. I've yet to hear how we can substantiate 60-cent increase. I just don't see that at this time. So I'm certainly, even in the best-case scenarios, I'm certainly not in support of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Jordan. Counselor Bartley?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm in support of the motion. I seconded it, and I just want to say that we did have an excellent tour, but I want to point out that in doing my research for this vote, I didn't see anything back 10, 11 years ago when the then City Council voted to vote it to Aquarian. I didn't see anything in the record criticizing the city's service. So yes, we saw great employees downtown, or down in Springdale, when we toured it. Nelson, Kevin, myself, and a former mayor was there, as well as probably a good 15 members of the public. Adults and children toured the facility, and so they're a credit to the city. But I think the employees for the city have been prior to 2005. I think they were a credit to the city. In fact, the record shows that they were a credit to the city. Received the award. I've done a lot of research on the vote that happened then. So I'm certainly aware of how councilors voted. I've looked at the record of that vote, and there was really, and it's funny, in the record, there's a little bit of a dearth of debate as to why this happened the way it did. But nevertheless, it's a situation, and Kevin has said I'm not going to revisit it, but I think, and furthermore, if you look on the web now, Ty and Bond has a really great study from 2014 showing every virtually every municipality in the Commonwealth's sewer rate. Holyoke, I don't think is, for state average, Holyoke's per person payment or per household payment is less than the statewide average. I can per the tie and bond report from 2014. Holyoke's is somewhere around 505, and the statewide average is somewhere in the 700 range on an annual per capita basis. So I was encouraged by that. I guess I'm of the opinion that probably a small increase is going to be needed. I thought I would probably support a 5 cent or 10% increase even tonight, but I'm happy with the motion the way it is right now, Madam Chair. I'm not being stubborn about this. I think that there are some additional information we need, and I'll conclude this way, Madam Chair. We still didn't hear from the superintendent. We didn't have anybody from United Water come before us, this committee, despite the fact that they knew about meetings and that they were requested to appear. We're going to have a change on Canal Street pretty soon. I think we now have some great connections with United Water, and hopefully we'll have the council president invite them to come, and we can hear more about from their perspective as to what the city demands in terms of revenue. And I'd rather wait to hear that, and furthermore, I'd rather wait to hear how we're doing on the collections.
Thank you, Councilor
Thank you.
Bartley. Councilor Lisi?
Thank you. I want to just note for the record that I was invited to tour the facility about 2 years ago at the request of George Neves, and I was always very impressed with the work that they're doing down there. And I was against the, effort, the initiative to privatize, because I thought that, from what I understood, the city was doing a good job with the sewer and the management of the wastewater treatment. However, the other part of the story is that we really needed to bring in some expertise to fix the CSOs, and that was expertise beyond that of the city. So in some ways, our sewer fee reflects some of those investments that were made in cleaning up the CSOs so that we're no longer polluting into the Connecticut River. I really think that while it's really great that we can speak to the fact that we passed some really great local ordinances and got some legislation on the books where we can now shut off sewer and water in relation to default sewer bills. I don't believe that we can shut off the water in the winter. So any collections that we may be able to gain from this new legislation really wouldn't be coming into spring, summer. And I think that is just going to have the effect of kicking the can down the road another year. So I think that we should move forward from the operations end just as much as we're moving in on the collections of default payments end to try to make this sewer fund whole. So I'd like to, if I may, amend, since the other amendment didn't take, I'd like to amend for a 20-cent increase for the next year. I think we really, as I said, I think we need to start hitting this operations budget. We need to start hitting the sewer issue from both sides, both the operations, bring the cost of operations more in line with what the actual figures are, while also pulling in and reining in the default sewer bills.
So we have a motion before us. Is there a second? I'll second 20-cent increase. So we have Councilor McGivern.
Thank you. Very quickly, so I know we just seem to stay on the sticking points, but one, Mr. President, thank you for that tour. I could not make it myself. I did go to the original tour, and I know you were there with me. But two of my friends asked about it, and they went down, Mike and David, and I think you know who I'm talking about, and they were amazed. And they said exactly what you said. This is a well-run operation, and Mike is both are very, in their own private careers, very distinguished and understand what's going on. And I agree, Councilor Bartley, I agree with everybody. We had wonderful group of people running the wastewater treatment plant before the federal government told us, we have to treat the stormwater. And therefore, we built, as we all know, the Berkshire project, which took care of about 60% of our problem. We still have $30 million of projects we have to do out there. And we're not even talking about that. We're going backwards towards the money we need to generate instead of forwards. If we don't make some increase, I don't know how to look at someone who isn't on the sewer line and tell them, we're just going to let your taxes continue to pay for it. To my neighbors who are on the sewer line, I don't know how to look them in the face and say, we're laying off teachers, we're laying off DPW, I'm not saying we are, but we are close. But you're paying for the sewer out of your property tax. We're not going to be able to pick up trash no more, but don't worry, you're paying for the sewer out of your property tax. The auditor's here. The auditor already told us during the budget hearing, there's another projected deficit. May not be as high as it was a month ago, but there's a projected deficit. Yes, we've made some good strides, and I commend the president for his motion on the cuts to the budget and the things that are going on, as I said before, in terms of collecting the arrears. But some increase, small 20 cents, I have no problem with that. At least something to go forward. And when the federal government is going to come back and stop looking the other way with that mandate, we don't know. And we've been good to have Billy Fuqua on our side, and somehow I think Billy has kept them away from us to a degree, but that's not going to happen forever. They just caught us by a storm, pardon the pun, and that's going to catch us again pretty soon. If we wait, and I don't mind the wait and see so much as, because it is a quarterly bill, we're not going to make next quarter. It's too late. So whatever increase we do is going to be for the second quarter at best, third and fourth. And if we wait 6 months, we're not going to make the third quarter. We won't see an increase until the fourth quarter of this year, which, the 20 cents won't do as much as it would if it was for 4 quarters. I just throw that out for consideration that, it's been eight years. The people I talk to, no one wants an increase, but they understand. They understand the costs went up. They understand the federal government is not giving us like they have for other communities. The help, we got some help when we built the project, not as much as other communities did. But we're mandated, it's unfunded mandates. The fines, if we don't follow what the federal government, says, will either destroy our budget or increase the sewer rate by quadruple. I would ask the committee to respectfully consider the 20 cents.
Thank you, Councilor McGivern. I would just note, just to clarify the record, that Superintendent Fuqua did provide information to the committee through the public hearing, but when he was invited to return to a second session, he did communicate back that he didn't feel he had further information to add beyond what had already been made available to the committee.
That's a good lame duck answer.
Well, we do have the spreadsheet that had been provided to us. And I think all of us appreciate the work that's being done at the treatment plant and recognize that a lot of the people there were the same people that worked for the city, and part of the contract negotiations was to keep them whole in their jobs, and that was one of the complicating factors of the whole bid process. But regardless of which side of that debate you are on, here we are, and I find myself swayed by the arguments on the one hand to see how the new collections work, but also that we haven't made any adjustment in 8 years, and it is supposed to be a self-sustaining fund. That is the nature of the fund, by fees from those who use it. So I will be supporting the 20-cent increase tonight. Councilor Lisi.
Just in terms of the talking points that Councilor McGivern made related to the federal government not handing us down any additional funds, or even the same level of funding in years past. I saw recently the MMA put out a call to local officials to call our state legislatures, because the Baker budget is going to be experience a higher deficit than it was anticipating, and some of that is related to, foreign affairs and current events having an impact at home. And so, I don't think that we can rely on even like the state, providing the same level of subsidies that it's been to our schools and other services. And I think that it's really, to me, it's one of the most powerful arguments in favor of an increase, so that we're not using our tax dollars that could be otherwise. We are so, dried out in terms of revenue streams that we can't be diverting our tax dollars to areas that should actually be supported by users. That's all I have to say.
Counselor Jordan?
Couple of points. One is, I just think it's important for us to note that the current city budget presupposes a $600,000 residential property tax increase as one of the budget assumptions. So we're already going to the residential taxpayers, who, by the way, 95% of whom are the exact same people who are paying on the sewer. So I know there's this interesting dialogue between ratepayers and residential taxpayers. In 95 out of 100 instances, that is the same identical people. So just so we're all crystal clear on that. So we're going to them for $600,000 spread among them already. This increase of 20 cents would be basically to ask them for another $250,000. At the same time, I think we need to ask ourselves is any of these things that are related to street repair and these other charges, these things need to be put into the general fund. All of these different street improvements and things to the infiltration system of how the system gets into the street. All these different things need to be extracted out of the budget. Those costs, when captured, will also help this budget sustain itself as well. Again, I'm going to come back to the point about these other CSO problems. Basically, there is no view in the future that we're going to have to, at this time, contemplate any large bonding project. The goal and the hope is that we're going to continue to receive grant funding as these different mandates are going through. And I know we're getting a couple $100,000 here and a couple $100,000 there, and we're kind of starting to address different ones. So I think overall, if the fund is short this coming year, it is not going to be by a lot, even if in the worst case scenario. And I think we need to take more of a 6-month approach to see how we're going through the fiscal year on this, and to continue to have these conversations about how we can strip out some of these costs from the sewer fund and rightly put them in the general fund. Again, I don't feel it's appropriate to continue to have all of the street repairs and all of this placed squarely on the backs of those individuals who are paying sewer only. I mean, everybody is using the benefit of the street, and those things have always traditionally been paid out of the general fund by tax monies. So any argument one can make in favor of ratepayers and paying their fair share, you can easily make those same arguments as to why general street repairs, culverts, all piping, all these things to support street runoff are paid by the general fund. And so those costs right now are being borne by the sewer fund, and not necessarily correctly so. We need to evaluate those costs. I know in particular there's a $300,000 per year fund that Suez/United Water is empowered without bid to go out and do those work. And they are allowed to, and that is just invoiced right back to the city every year to do those. All necessary stuff. There's no question that it needs to be done. But the point is, why is that necessarily paid? It's in the, it's just like street sweeping. Street sweeping, the argument behind why it always was in the general fund, went into the enterprise fund. Even when we had public operations, street sweeping was always paid by the general fund. The view was later, well, if we pick it up on the street, it doesn't end up in the sewer system, so it's saving us money, and we're not fishing it out of the, sand and debris and these other things. It's cheaper to go and pick it up on the street, which is absolutely true. But that unnecessarily for all these years added, I don't know, probably another $1.2 million, $1.3 million in expense over the cumulative years to the fund. This is why that was important for us to take that out. So I think as we really think about this as to what should be paid from the general fund, what should be paid from the sewer fund, and now that we can get this collection problem behind us with good, strong enforcement, I think you're going to see this fund is not so wildly off as people think it is, or is being led to believe. And so I think we always need to remember rate increases are the last resort. And then the question also presents itself. You got all this money. Can you save on anything? This is where I think we need to have Suez. That's the third wheel of all of this. You got a $7 million budget. Let's taking the bond payments out of it. $7 million. Can you save anything? I mean, $100,000. Anything. Maybe the answer is no. But we got to ask that question, and we got to have the people that know the answers to those questions here. And once you begin to address those questions operationally, no one in this room certainly has an answer to that question operationally. I think once you continue to examine this, and we can squeeze that lemon out of that juice out of the lemon, then we could perhaps see us getting to a point where, absolutely, last resort, we have to increase the rates, but I still don't think we're quite at that point. And then the other question I also think we need to ask ourselves is, what relief can we ask a Representative Vega or a Senator Humison to say, look at how Holyoke is uniquely presented now that we know about 91 and the runoff from 91 and how this is feeding into the system, the millions and millions of gallons. It was something that I learned at this tour was on a decent rain event, the average, okay, let me back up. When there's no rain event, the average flow is about 6 to 6.5 million gallons a day that are coming down to the plant. Well, what's interesting about that is you can see from all other sources, because we're only selling about 5 million gallons of water a day. So where does this magical other 1 million to 2 million gallons of water come from every day? It ain't coming from the reservoir, right? Because that's what we're billing people on. Well, that's coming from, Bray Stream, these different brooks that are coming in. Like the one from Community Field alone is 1 million gallons of water a day. We're treating brook water. Now, maybe the answer is there's nothing we can do about that, but can we have that looked at? Some of these other things of how, and we know that every drop of water that people purchase is ever even going into the sewer. So the dichotomy between metered water and what is actually going down there is even greater, right? Because people do have pools and drink water and cook with it and wash their cars and things of this nature and water their lawns. So, but the other thing that's interesting is the peak flow in a decent rainstorm is 37 million gallons of water a day are coming down. That is the actual capacity of the plant. 37 million gallons a day when they have a rain event. Now, by the way, for you who are keeping score, the people who say, oh, this is just a system to take care of those who have sewers, well, they're the 5 million metered. Who should pay for the other 32 million when it comes down in the rain? The people that are paying for the 5 are now paying the 37, by the way. Just for those who are keeping track at home. Now, one more better is, no, it gets better than that. They have had flows as much as 300 million gallons in a day when they have had major storm events. They've had it at peak out. That is where, once it goes over the 37, that's when the whole CSO thing kicks in and all that. Really fascinating. But the point is to have all the capacity to treat all of that, you know, that is coming from the street. So, you know, I'm not saying we're going to go there, but I'm just saying that is something to also consider as well. So I think there's a lot of expenses that are related not directly to the direct operations of the plant that we also need to consider, and that was the point I wanted to make in bringing that up. Thank you.
Counselor Lisi.
Thank you. I'll make my points very brief. I just like to say that, you know, I'd be totally in favor of keeping the sewer rate the same if we had some sort of stormwater fee to account for that extra water that's being processed during those rain events, that our friends that are not on the sewer lines but on the septic tanks, they actually enjoy water-free streets. So I would totally be in favor of a stormwater fee, and that is exactly what Chicopee does, and which is why Chicopee has a lower sewer rate than us. It's not because their residents are paying less money for the same services that we're providing through sewer and the stormwater service being combined here, but they're separating it out. But that's not what's on the table before us. I do want to just note that I amended my amendment to a 20-cent increase because I felt that, Mr. President, you had indicated that you could see yourself voting for a 20-cent increase. And so I'd like to move the motion if we can.
I have Counselor McGivern in the queue, and I reserve
I'll be quick.
a minute for myself.
I'll be quick.
Counselor McGivern.
There's a lot of the formula that can be better, should be better, and some that it's out of our control. But the ultimate quest, I hope, or the ultimate goal is we can't let our sewage go into the Connecticut River untreated. You know, I mean, that's from all points of view, something that 100 years ago was okay. It's not okay. And granted, we deserve grants and help because I don't think it's the people who are living currently today that should foot the bill for everything, but we need to foot the bill for the operations, and that's what we generate on a daily basis. Ironically, as we sit here and talk about that big brook, the storm run off from 91, the stormwater runoff from our streets, the big problem is we don't have separated storm drains. Eventually it all ends up in Berkshire Street or somewhere else heading towards the river. The federal government is talking about treating stormwater. That's the next big step. And if they're not helping us right now with the sewage, do you think they're going to help us with the stormwater? So some type of an increase and waiting for 6 months, but some type of a small increase at the moment, I think is worth it. Now, last week we talked about HEDIC and HEDIC over-subsidizing our Economic Development Office, and they've been doing that since somewhere in the mid-90s. That was the same time that the treatment plant budget took over for sweeping the streets. And that's because the city budget got so desperate, we were about to close a third of each of our big departments just to meet the budget and to meet the unemployment rates that would have been a demand and the layoffs that would have taken place. And, you know, before Marty Dunn left, before Bill Hamilton took over, before the override, we did everything we could to balance the budget and to eliminate things. And things that could be picked up, HEDIC, the wastewater treatment plant, were picked up by them. I have no problem returning it, but eventually, you know, if we keep those monies in the city side of the budget, as we're looking at the problems of the wastewater treatment plant, the coal plant and the lack of taxable revenue, while we're trying to overcome that, as we're looking at the increases in the cost of services we do, which we can't have no control over, some type of increase is warranted just to keep us going. You know, even if there was a small surplus, that money could be earmarked for some of those projects that are coming. I doubt there's going to be a small surplus. Mr. President, I hope you're right. I hope it's not the deficit we've been looking at, and hopefully, you know, the efforts we've made and the efforts that they've made, you know, is part of it. But just one last plea, just some type of a slight increase, I think is going to make a lot of good taxpayers happy out there. Maybe not happy to pay it, but happy to know why we're paying it and that it's not coming out of their property tax.
Thank you. So I would just like to comment, not to relitigate the whole stormwater fee concept, but when the stormwater can flow up Route 202 to get into the treatment plant, then I'd be warm to chatting about it. In the meantime, I find myself swayed by the argument for the small amount. I find myself also very supportive to get more data from the water people relative to the general repairs and how that fund is running and how that thing is going citywide so that we can understand it better and perhaps move it into the general fund if that's where it properly belongs. And I don't see any reason why we can't continue to pursue those things, even if we do pass a small increase, which is the only thing that I'd feel remotely comfortable doing at this time. But I do find myself swayed by the arguments because of the lag in being able to implement the collections and also the lag in doing the increase, that I could support a one-time but not the continual increase. Is there anybody else who wishes to be heard on this? If not, the motion that's on the table before us right now is the amendment that was made to recommend to the city council that we increase the current sewer rate by 20 cents. So on the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay, so on that motion, we have 2 yes, 3 no, so the motion fails. So we go to the first motion, which was made, which was that there would be no sewer increase. And so on that motion, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No. The same vote in reverse. So we will be recommending to the full body, no increase to the current sewer rate. And just as a matter of housekeeping, should the full body accept the recommendation of the committee, then there would need to be a new order filed for the committee to subsequently consider a different sewer rate.
That makes sense. Yep.
Okay?
Point of order, it's a majority vote?
3-2.
No,
To recommend.
Full body, yeah.
A full body is a majority vote, correct?
Yep.
Thank you.
So
Thank
we
you,
will,
Madam Chair.
we will provide
Pretty
full
sure.
report to the council.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, I didn't hear the last part.
0.
If.
No,
okay,
I heard the motion, but the
So-
qualification,
Oh, all I said was, now that we have acted on this order and we've made a recommendation to the city council and the council will act on it, that to have the committee revisit
oh, okay.
a future order
But
would
the council
require a new
can
one.
choose whatever number they wish.
Correct.
The council can
Yeah,
amend on the floor
I was
that evening.
just letting the committee know it would be
Sorry.
done as far as we're concerned unless the council sent it back for some reason.
Thank you.
Okay, that was all. Thank you. Okay,
All right, motion to take item 3 off the, what's it, 3,
3,
4?
4, 5, 6,
Yep.
7, and 8.
and
or
8
perhaps
through 8.
8.
7 and 8? Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So this is the procurement amendment to the ordinance, and let me just quickly read through the variety of orders. That the City of Holyoke amend Chapter 30 of its Code of Ordinances to provide for the public procurement of outside legal counsel. That we amend Chapter 30 of the Code to provide for public procurement of ambulance service. That City of Holyoke amends Chapter 30 of its code to provide for public procurement of banking service, to strengthen procurement laws that the City of Holyoke will put police-ordered towing out to bid on at least a biennial basis. Ordered that, this is item 7, ordered that Division 3 entitled Purchasing Department of Chapter 2 of the Court of Ordinances be reviewed and amended as necessary for consistency with the thresholds set by Mass General Law, Chapter 30B. And finally, 8, order that the city council proceed with a bid process regarding the replacement of the city's outside legal counsel. So we have all of those orders before us. We have met at least twice on this order and had amended language before us. At our last meeting, We had a final draft that everybody had had an opportunity to review. The remaining arena to be addressed was the preamble relative to ethics and language relative to donations, which we discussed and came up with some ideas. And we're looking forward to input from Attorney Cunha, who I believe sent us something today.
I have copies.
Okay.
I'll get 'em.
If we can suspend necessary rules so Kara can approach and
Second.
review with us?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We did receive them by email, I think.
I can't.
No, honest to.
I don't think so. I think that was
Not,
different.
was that?
That was on the drone thing.
Was that drone? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want one for yourself?
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
I can go through what
Thank you for your
Counselor Bartley
research on
just
this.
handed out.
That would be great.
So there's what, 3 documents?
There's
Let's-
3 documents,
Let's just get
yeah.
those before you begin.
Yeah, we have just
Yeah.
one more. Thanks. So this would be
Thank you.
the final draft.
Maybe.
Okay, so this incorporates the draft components of this that you put in?
No, I did them separate.
Separate? Okay.
So I
All right.
can,
Okay.
so
So basically,
Okay.
7 is apart from the rest of those orders in the document.
in the first draft, the longest one that says Division 3 Purchasing Department and says draft amendments June 28th at the top. I mean, that's kind of the final, I did add on page 2, under section 2-334 for purpose, just another statement that it's the goal of the city that all contracts are awarded in a fair and competitive manner, ensuring the best prices and service. And so that was the only thing that changed in this whole document. And then I did do the other issue of the campaign donations is the second. There's a draft and then also a model ordinance, which is from New Jersey, just so you could see. There is no other community in Massachusetts that has a similar ordinance. The city of Somerville is currently looking at a similar ordinance. Their city council had adopted something in 2014. It was vetoed by the mayor, and they're looking at it again. So the draft is kind of based.
Did they override the veto, or?
No, they
No.
didn't. So I guess, I mean, there's still a lot in that part of it that would need to be figured out. I think probably the biggest part, we talked last week about what contracts it would apply to. What Somerville proposed and what the model ordinance proposes does not apply to contracts that are put out to bid or done through a competitive process. They only apply to basically exempt. I mean, obviously, the model one is from New Jersey, so it's a little bit different. Somerville was proposing that it only applies to contracts that are not subject to a competitive RFP or bid. And I haven't spoken with the Inspector General's office. I left messages and have traded some messages. I did speak with the Assistant City Solicitor in Somerville, and he relayed that he had spoken to the Inspector General's office and that they did have concerns with applying these types of regulations to competitive contracts because they are obviously governed by the state law, Chapter 30B. So
Would that be because it's seen as a double layer of regulation on the same?
Well, because, I mean, it's, to some extent, I mean, my concern would be that 30B is setting forth a competitive process, and you're essentially maybe not following those requirements, where a low bidder could now be thrown out because they gave a donation. So those are probably their concerns.
Okay, are there members of the committee that have further questions for Kara?
I thought you'd just walk us through this proposed plan. What she came up with here?
Sure, so this, and there's a lot of the comments, kind of indicate some areas that would need to be decided, based on what we had talked about last week, which would be, you know, what, if there's a dollar value, a threshold that the requirements apply to. So in section 2C, where it says contract, I did leave in the language, this was from Somerville, that if the agreement is awarded pursuant to a competitive bidding process, or they also included that the restrictions wouldn't apply to sole source procurements, which essentially is there's only one company that makes what you need. And so if that company happens to have given a donation, you're essentially shooting yourself in the foot and wouldn't be able to obtain that product from that one company that makes it. So that language, I mean, obviously that could be changed. It would need to have a further conversation with the Inspector General's office.
Weren't these, the city is contemplating under the procurement ordinance now to convert towing contracts and these other things from sole source.
Well, they're
Correct.
not sole source,
sole
they're just
source.
exempt from 30B.
Exempt.
Right.
Sole source has its own
Definition.
set of requirements, and it
Okay.
essentially is that you can only get what you need from
Okay,
that one source.
Only one person in the city makes
Monopoly.
pens.
That's why we like
I see.
competition. That's why I was just making an
And it's
editorial
heavily
comment.
regulated what is sole source then?
Right, it's governed by the statute.
That's why we like competition.
All right. Okay.
I mean, so then I guess it's just kind of figuring out the way it's written is that the person, prior to entering into a contract, the contractor would have to make a disclosure of any contributions that they've made. And that would extend to either individuals or officers of a corporation. We had talked about also including contributions made by its employees, which I think goes pretty far. Most of the other ones I've seen don't go that far to any employees.
They ever had managing employees?
Right, that's included as far as,
Because there's a distinction between a managing employee and an officer.
well, it's written as chief executive officer, president, financial officer, treasurer, operating officer, procurement officer, directors, members, managers, principals,
Okay, similar
shareholders
functions.
in
Okay.
excess.
All right, very good. Yep.
And then the way most other ordinances are set up is that it's not necessarily bans on contributions, but limits, more strict limits that, or limits going forward, I guess, that's the way. So you would have to decide if a contract is not gonna be awarded, you know, what is that number? If you're talking about a company, is there some kind of an aggregate number? There might be typos in there from the city of Somerville that I didn't go back and change because they used their draft. And then going forward, can they make any kind of contribution that maybe it's limited, or are they just prohibited? So those are what most of the comments are that would need to be decided. And then the last part the last two sections, basically the penalty would be that a contract could be revoked if it's found to have been awarded in violation of the ordinance. The city of Somerville was proposing fines, but they have a local ethics commission that would enforce this, so I'm not really sure who the appropriate body to enforce, but I think obviously revoking a contract is a serious penalty. And then it does allow for somebody to refund contributions if they wanted, if they found they were in violation, they could essentially cure it. So, I will say, I spoke to the Office of Campaign Finance Reform as well, and they don't really have necessarily a role in reviewing any type of ordinance, but just so you're aware, is they would not enforce this type of ordinance because it goes beyond the state law. They don't enforce anything that is more restrictive than state law. Right.
Yeah, which makes sense, yeah. Okay.
And I guess my suggestion would be, based on the concerns I've heard, to structure it similar to what Somerville has, so that it's restricting donations for a contract that's not subject to a public process, because that really seems to be what the driving concern has been, and I think that's a lot more manageable, and eliminates the concern of any kind of, possibly being preempted by the state law or subjecting us to bid protests or anything like that. So where I guess that leaves you with two options: to leave like the tow contracts and the other contracts that you're putting under a competitive process, take that out, leave them to be awarded by the mayor, but subject to something like this, or make them competitive and then not have this. Right.
Because go ahead, Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to ask, so if we merge or add this, can we reference this in the purchasing?
Yeah, I think we can figure out, I thought it was just easier to kind of keep it
Right, but
separate. Yeah,
to
we could
make
include
them
it.
be together.
Right.
We wouldn't be able to take this and sort of create a separate ordinance. It would be in the context of what we're
Well, that's how
doing
you've wanted to, I think,
with the purchasing,
right. It could be under a separate order, but at this point,
so that
I
we
think-
can move it.
right.
So it would need to be referenced. And
Yeah,
so
just
that,
make it as another section.
right. So that's an interesting question for the committee to consider, though.
Yes.
Because from the competitive perspective, we have added in these 4 services. But if we're going to move in this direction, then the question is this adequate? And then do you wish to leave them in the exempt category?
Or at
So-
least some of them, yeah.
Right, so food for thought. Counselor Jordan?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. One is, I think well, let me back up by saying, not have a competitive process, but could we create something that is requesting the mayor for just a solicitation of interest, which is not a competitive process, he picks? So like, say we decided to take tow contract out of competitive process. So it'll be subject to the pay-to-play rules. But could we create a provision in the ordinance that says, while the mayor this is not a competitively bid process, a section that basically is language that says, the mayor should seek solicitation of interest of who is interested in, so he can obviously, how does he even know who to make a pick from if, without going through the whole 30B competitive process, but just a posting with a solicitation of interest? And then you just forward his name, he picks whomever he wishes. Is that permissible?
Yeah, it can say that.
Could we create an ordinance that
Proposal.
says that, the mayor every year or 2 years, or however often they do the towing contract, is every December 1st or January 1st does a solicitation of interest, and publishes it and posts it for a period of 30 days as to those who are interested, and he picks.
Yeah, I guess it's.
Yeah.
I don't know. You can say it doesn't mean the mayor has to
Do it.
comply with it. Yeah.
Can we
it's
make an
kind of-
ordinance that says he has to do the noticing piece without it being, going out for bids and the whole 30B rules and all that. Something short of that, just a noticing rule, that he has to actually publish I'm gonna be making my decision to pick someone, and I'm putting out a notice of, because that.
I mean, I don't want to speak for the mayor, it's kind of, if it's the executive authority to award the contract, then I think it's within the executive's purview to award that however the mayor wants. I mean, certainly, I guess you can have that, it comes back to the question, if that's not done, is that gonna void the contract? Probably not, because it's within
Can't
the
we make
mayor's
it a rule
purview to.
Can we make it a rule that that the opportunity is advertised? Because otherwise, how does the mayor even know who to pick from if he doesn't have any process
Well, I
of
mean,
soliciting
it's-
interest? Word of mouth?
I don't, like there's a lot of contracts, obviously,
Pearl?
based on value that aren't required to go out to bid, and you can, if you have to get quotes, you just need to solicit 3 quotes. You
I'm
can
looking
do.
for a medium position here on this, such that,
And if that's what you want to put in place, I mean, I can tell you, I would imagine the mayor would want to have the authority to award the contract however he wants.
Well,
if
he'll have that
is-
authority.
But if that authority is vested in, so I'm just saying, I mean, you can create those, but
It would be similar
it's
to.
more like a recommendation.
It would be similar to the way that we could still vote for whoever we want in terms of our appointments.
Right, that's a
whether they're
good
here
analogy.
at the
Yeah.
table, if they
Right.
put in an application
but
or
we at
not.
least put an advertisement in the paper that says who's interested in being.
But we actually don't. We don't. That's the law and ordinance that we've tried to pass over and over
Oh, I see
again.
what you're saying. For some of the,
Yeah,
yeah, for some,
I think
for
that's
the,
true.
for the, but that's on reappointments.
Yeah.
But as it initiates initial appointments, we do advertise. Like, for example, this third assessor, even a non-paying job, we put a thing out,
Right, but
advertised
if you
it.
didn't appoint somebody that applied, that's not gonna void that appointment. I think that's
yeah,
what
we
council
can-
And I'm not suggesting any restraints whatsoever on his appointment authority. What I am simply saying is, companies actually will have a process to actually apply. For example, this is very similar to what we did with broker of record in a way, right? Because we said there's an advertisement, people can apply, he ultimately picks whoever he wants.
No, that's fine. I'm just making you aware that it's more like a recommendation. So if that's what you want to put in the ordinance.
It's not even a
I mean,
recommendation.
that's-
It's just
if
people
that's
are
what you wanna
submitting their
put in
name.
The ordinance, that's fine. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So,
but I would like to
mean,
create a requirement that he has to at least let the world be on notice that he is making this decision.
That's fine.
Okay, all right. So now that,
Any procurement?
oh, it's all on procurement, all on
No,
procurement.
but are you in this document when you're talking about that versus the pay to play?
Well, I'm teeing up pay to play.
Right.
Okay, because now with us checking that box as to competitive, as to do nothing, which is the current state, okay, which is sort of the wild, wild west, in my humble opinion. Then you have the, just post it, he picks whoever he wants, but at least the world is on notice that there's actually a process, or he's gonna make a decision at least. Maybe it's not even a process. Then the other one is, in the first incarnation, full competitive 30B process. But this now, listening carefully to what was said, this precludes now putting on the pay-to-play restrictions. So if we go with the middle position and don't do competitive, the advantage now is we can put the pay-to-play rules, and therefore, I feel perfectly comfortable that I have no worry about any mayor making a decision about who is best if everyone had an opportunity to apply, he picks, but meanwhile, no one has written the mayor any big checks. So now I don't have to worry about undue influences on the mayor's judgment, or at least the allegation of that. Not to say that that has occurred. So I think that kind of gives us the best of both worlds between the two.
Madam Chair, may I? Thank you. So the research around campaign contributions would say you can't ever really stop the flow of money into the campaign, and what you want to do is just create the highest level of transparency. So you up the recording requirements, the reporting requirements. The disclosure, and then if, you know, the towing company, or who else are we talking about here?
That's the big one, though.
Yeah, the broker of record, whatever, does make a large contribution to the candidate, and they're selected for the contract, that's out there, right? So it doesn't preclude the mayor from acting in any particular way. It doesn't hamper his powers in any way, but the public knows then that there's this relationship there, and they may be skeptical, they may punish the candidate in the future, but the idea is to make everything as transparent as possible so that people can make their own evaluations and judgments on that relationship.
Thank you. Well, to that point, I mean, there are disclosure laws, so anybody giving over $200, it has to be filed and disclosed on
Right,
the
that's
campaign finance reporting anyway.
Right, we already have that.
Right, so I mean, I think the only way this becomes meaningful is if there's some upper cap, which then precludes the ability of the bid without curing the problem, because that's the whole point.
And then,
That
yeah.
I'm hearing.
Yeah, I agree with Councilor Lisi. I do support disclosure, no question.
Right.
But I believe our state legislature has covered that for us, at least as it relates to donations 200 or more. Well, 50 or more technically, but you're required to disclose. But 200 or more, you actually have to state who your employer is. So, some of the common names we know, but some of the lesser players who may be the manager of the auto parts room, and you're wondering, well, why did he give $400? I don't know, vis-a-vis his annual income. But nevertheless, my point is, it doesn't seem that disclosure alone, my concern is that a sufficient enough deterrent to this. I don't think it is, because one, it presupposes the incumbent always has an opponent. Two, it presupposes the incumbent has an opponent that can sufficiently defeat. And three, it also presupposes that the mayor, whomever he or she is using the contributions that are being disclosed against the person who would be getting the message out to say it's not a good thing. So it's like this person starts with plus $24,000, the opponent has 0, he's got 24, and it's, okay, Minnie Mouse, start yelling about how this one's got, the 24 grand, but you gotta now come up with 24 grand to say why it's bad that he has 24 grand. Because you can't count on the incumbent to say, I know, I think this is awful, and I shouldn't have taken it, but I took it anyways because it's what good government's all about. And when we're getting to a point where 1/3 to between 30% to 25% of the incumbent's total contributions in a year are coming from people who are partaking in 1 or 2 contracts, it's a problem. It's a real problem. And to the point where I think we need to act. And I think we need to say, you know what, okay, if you and the parts manager and the assistant to the assistant and the vice president of this and that, and blah, 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 and every member of the family are all gonna kick in. Now that the maximum limit now is $1,000 a person, you can see how quickly this can rack up. And where if it was 200 a person or something, or 100 a person, it's not gonna be so much of an influence. I don't think disclosure enough does it.
Okay, so just in terms of proceeding, relative to the main document that is the purchasing department draft amendment of June 28th.
Which ones did we add, Madam Chair?
The ones that we
purchasing
added.
We did, what did we do? Was
we
ambulance?
We added, hang on,
The four that
legal,
are there.
ambulance, banking, and towing, making them non-exempt,
Correct.
Okay,
as the language sits now. So
okay.
I don't know which way you want to go about it, but if we want to tie the pay-to-play language to the procurement language, we'd have to reference it probably in
We could
A,
add it in. I
right?
can figure out where. I
So
just
we'd
thought it
reference
was.
it in A, and it seems like we'd have to add a top-end number to this draft to accomplish the goal that I'm hearing discussed.
I just thought it was easier to look at it in a separate document,
No,
but
no,
it
no,
would be
that's
added.
very
It's no
helpful,
longer-
but
yeah.
because it then creates a, now what do you want to do?
Yeah.
I'm just interested in getting some feedback from the committee. Do you want to try to complete the separate document relative to the pay-to-play to put a top end in terms of the total for it to be eligible to be a contract, and then the ongoing, how much the top end could be during the life of the contract? That would seem to be key points.
You mean the donation amount?
Yes. In 4C and
Well, the first would be
4A.
too, the threshold of contract that it's gonna apply to. I mean, and it could be just any, I guess, any, but
The New
in summer.
Jersey model had a 17,500.
Yeah, Somerville was proposing 25,000, over 25,000.
okay,
And I'd even be comfortable with a higher limit than that even of, 50,000, 75,000, 100,000. Any one of those numbers would be reasonable. I mean, we're talking about, I think where I'm most concerned about this is in the areas of broker of record, towing.
Well, the broker of record is subject to a competitive process now.
right,
Okay.
fix
Because
that
of
a
the
different way.
Okay,
So
so that's out, all
on,
right.
on 2C, is there a motion for a limit?
I'll make a motion for a limit of 70,000.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
70, you said?
70,000.
70, yeah.
0. Okay, so then we move to item 4A. At which point,
Oh, hold on, what are some of these like,
well, we can get back to those, but right now, I'm just trying to get us
oh,
to
look, isn't there
do
a
some
fill, isn't there a
numbers.
fill-in on 3.3? Looks like there's supposed to be a number there.
Yeah, well, that I think also is, well,
That'll be the same in 4A.
4A is no contract shall be awarded to any person who's made a total contribution of more than X
That's
dollars.
the upper limit.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So we'll just
And then-
carry that over into.
Well,
any of
3.3 and 4C are ongoing during the life of the contract. How much can somebody give?
And Kara, you know you have a city of Somerville in here, right?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yes.
There's some formatting that needs to be fixed. There might be more, I'll double.
Okay, so
I'd be comfortable with $100 a year. I think that's reasonable.
for the ongoing continuation,
Yeah, just, you get to give $100 a year.
so you're talking 4C.
4C, 4A, and 3.3. Everybody make $100 a year
Well-
contribution.
That sounds really low, I have to say.
Well,
Well, I guess, and maybe it's not clear, but there also has to be, so it's an individual, and then you could have like a total, yeah, like from a
Business.
business,
Oh,
could be
okay.
like, yeah, a
All right,
higher.
well, I could go with an individual of 200 as long as the company doesn't exceed 1,000. Does that seem reasonable?
Sure.
Yeah.
so you're treating
Okay.
the company like a person.
And I might have
Saying
to,
1,000
Yeah, right.
max
So
from
if,
the
yeah, so if
company.
the company gave 1,000 a year, I mean, I think, that's
It
fine.
wouldn't be undue.
That's not unreasonable, yeah.
Okay, so under 4A, I have 200 per individual, 1,000 per company.
so that's the threshold, so no contract will be awarded if somebody's given those amounts.
Yeah, 200 an individual, 1,000 for a company per cumulative.
For how many years back?
I don't
Do you
think we
want them
can
to
go
reap?
back.
Can we go, how about just one, how about just the 1 year preceding?
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't think we can go retro.
Oh, no, it's not gonna go, it's not gonna be, it's not gonna be applicable prior to the date the ordinance takes effect, but once
Right.
it takes effect, so like, 2 years from now when it's in effect, how far?
Be now, it'll
Back.
be a year.
A year, okay.
Right? I mean,
Well, it would be
Any
that
con-
election year. I mean, that makes the most sense. Like, so for the calendar year that the election takes place.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we pass it now,
Just say the
it'll
year
be in
previous.
effect, it's gonna be in effect, well, when we pass it, it would be in effect
It'll
now.
take
So
effect.
no more contributions, right?
but I would just say you'd want to say 1 year previous, regardless of when the year is. Because if you say the year of the election, people will just give it the other year.
Yeah, and that's
I
gonna
mean,
get
you know,
murky
that's just going
too,
to become a
because
game.
for some, it's gonna be every 4, for some of us,
Right.
it's gonna be every 2.
Right, just say
Yeah.
previous year.
Previous year.
Just keep it simple.
And
is the
while, and
year-
while,
The year prior to that election, right?
Any year. Could be the election year, the year before
way-
the election,
yeah.
it could be
I don't,
3
yeah,
years before
because
the
I
election.
don't want them to give it in the
Who
off
cares?
years either. It's never, yeah.
You know.
So the bottom line, Kara, is 200 a person, 1,000 a company.
Okay.
Cumulative per year,
And during the contract, that's how much they can continue to give?
correct,
Okay.
Per year.
per year.
So everything's a year. And is the
Everything's a
year
year.
January to December or July to June?
January to December, that's how OCPF does it. It's calendar year
Is a
with
year.
OCPF. yeah,
So,
Yeah, it refers to calendar year.
all right, calendar year.
Calendar year.
Counselor Bartley?
So I think when you're saying that, you said 200 per person or $1,000. When you say 1,000 per company, you mean $1,000 for the total of employees who work for that company?
Yes.
Okay, 'cause can we just make that a little
Yeah,
clearer?
let's
Are
make
you
sure.
including any employees or just the, like, managing employees?
We were,
I thought it was any employee.
Any employee.
I thought we were,
Any employee?
no, I thought we
Okay.
were using the definition that Kara read to us, because if somebody's stocking a shelf in a company, we're not gonna be tracking, it was the principals, the managers, the CEO, the CFO, the
Yeah.
operating managers, it was the,
You gotta be careful, though, that people don't circumvent this, though, with,
And because we're also asking the
you just have another employee, I just should be any employee.
we're asking the contractor to disclose those contributions, and I guess how would
How
an
would they know?
employer know if just
it's really.
Jim in the stockroom
could-
made a donation?
They could just send a survey out to their people, simple enough. We get asked that stuff
But
at
it's
work.
really none of their business,
Yeah, I agree.
This makes it their
unless-
business.
unless you have given an amount that's gonna be publicly published and you know it, then it's really none of who you work for's business, who you give your money to. Which is why a lot of people give small amounts, so they're under the radar.
Yeah, but
And I
Linda,
agree,
the flip side to easily defeat that is have every employee give $199 that is not a managing employees, and you're right back up to $10, $20, $30, $40,000 again.
How about the employee spouse?
Yeah, but I mean,
I can see, if we're talking about principals, like, I'm fine with, like, the company and the managers, but to reach beyond that, it just,
And it does extend to spouses and children of the principal,
It does?
yeah,
Oh,
or,
okay.
but,
Is that
I
in
wouldn't
here?
want my employer involved in how I'm managing my finances to any degree, whether it's a political contribution or otherwise, so. You know, if you have a vested interest in the company as like
those are-
somebody with a proprietary interest, then that's a different story.
managers, I see that.
But, you know, the thing of it is, guys, we have to be realistic here. How many regular people who are, you know, Joe the pencil contract, okay, is making a $200 donation to Mayor Morse or Counselor Lisi or Counselor Jordan? I mean, how often does that happen? I mean, extreme rarity. What we're trying to do is, these companies that are the ones that we're most concerned about don't have oceans of employees. And so I think we're just concerned about not making sure we create a system that's easily circumvented.
And I
That's
don't
my
want to
point.
create
I would
a
make
system that is specifically created for specific businesses. I mean, the law should be law, it should be evenly applied.
I agree.
So I don't think we should be creating legislation for particular businesses in mind.
So could I offer
Well, they're
a
supposed to
suggestion?
disclose, by the way, $50 or more. In fact, it's subject to a request by OCPF, anybody that's over $50. So you already have disclosure laws for everybody in Massachusetts anyways. What's the point? Why can't you disclose to your employer if it's being disclosed to the state anyways?
Could I offer an amendment that might get at the matter?
Okay.
That we simply limit it to $100 per year per person. Then you don't care who it is, because it's 100, and these main people that you're talking about, you're not worried about who's being counted in the 1,000. And if they're giving that much, it'll be reported anyway.
So 100,
Then you just capture it.
then no company cap.
Right, you just say 100 a person
All right.
and leave out the company cap. And it's
Okay.
reportable anyway.
Right.
I mean, I'm just trying to come up.
But you're also limiting, you're significantly limiting, so you're moving the threshold from 500 per individual, which is what the state allows, to 100.
1,000 now is the limit.
You're right, it's 1,000. So, I mean, it's putting a significant limit on an individual's ability to contribute, whether or not they're directly, a principal or an employee of that
Only
company.
if they want to bid on a public contract.
Yeah, that's
Then
part-
you're talking about the principals
Yes.
alone.
Because I think that's the heart of the matter. And
I thought we were gonna say anybody, it's 100, but no company cap. That's any employee, 100. But no total cap.
well, we could do that. It's gonna be on the form anyway, right?
But again, that means that we are, the city of Holyoke, limiting an individual's ability to contribute to a candidate from $1,000 to a tenth of that, $100. So the state is allowing individuals to contribute up to $1,000. City of Holyoke is now saying, if you're employed just randomly, I mean, kind of by life chances, by one of these companies, now you can only contribute a tenth of what the state allows you by law.
But you do know why this is though, right?
Yeah,
Pretty obvious what we're driving at here. The concern, so just so it's not understated, the concern by me and perhaps other citizens in Holyoke is that these people are making donations ostensibly, one could argue for a reason, that it's pay to
it's
play.
in their interest, right?
Yes,
in their interest.
it's not that we are putting this cap on them like, oh, don't you understand? They have this right to give 1,000 and everybody's chomping at the bit to give 1,000. How many people who aren't getting these contracts are making those type of contributions to Holyoke elected officials? It's so rare that, I mean, you can count on one hand the amount of $1,000 donations you, me, or the mayor are getting from people that don't have contracts with the city.
And just a second, if you could. Kara, do you have any input that you could offer for us on this from your perspective?
Well, I think you want to have a limit on the
On
company.
the company? Okay.
And I think if you're extending it beyond the managing employees, it's going to be very difficult to enforce because they essentially have to self-report. So, I mean, I think it gets, if you did what you said, the 200,000, that seemed to make sense because for a company, that's potentially 5 individuals giving.
Which sounded fine as long as everybody's participating and agreeing to that.
But at the same time, it's like the interests of the principals are different than the interests of the employees. And so I totally feel like if we're going to put limits on the business and the principals, like that's one thing, but to start trickling down into the company, and I mean, different size companies, like I could imagine like, a large factory with, 100 plus employees. I mean, that's not who we're talking about here, but we shouldn't be designing laws around these individual businesses. You know, how do we start, you know,
Well, I just want to make sure we don't have Joe the bottle washer making a $500 contribution to the mayor, where Joe the bottle washer gets paid $35,000 a year, but Joe the bottle washer is making a $500 contribution to someone.
Well, right, but
Now, the question is,
it's illegal for somebody to give.
is
him
that,
money
is
to
that,
somebody
is
else.
that,
Right, that's already illegal.
you know, I just want to make sure that we go with that approach, but if we see that,
Well, I just want to check something out with Kara. My understanding is that it's illegal for somebody to give money to somebody else, to
Oh, yeah.
give to somebody else
I would
on their
think so.
behalf.
Right.
Already, right? So if there was that kind of circumventing going on, then I think that's already illegal anyway.
Yeah.
I didn't say that that's how it
I'm not
happens.
saying it's happening that way, but I'm throwing out a theoretical,
Okay.
if there was a concern of that sort. So, right now, what we have agreed to is the 200 and the 1,000 per company. And the $100 that could continue to be made. That's what we have right now.
$100, okay, to
On
continue,
4C.
okay.
So we're gonna go with 100 on everybody and no cap, or 200 with a $1,000 cap.
Well, the 200 with the $1,000 cap is, if it exceeded that, then the contract could not be awarded.
Okay.
Or could be revoked in the successing years,
But yeah.
because that's a permanent
Then
cap.
the other, 4C is if you can continue to contribute once you have the contract. That's
I
4C.
mean, you can say no if it's easier. You can say if you're awarded a contract, you can't make any contributions, I guess.
That might be easier. Yeah, under 4C, we said $100 a year.
The hell with it.
But we could say, just stay out of the politics if you have the contract. Avoid the conflict of interest.
That way, I mean, you keep it clean and hopefully
Okay. I'm sold.
Now, so I need a motion.
So what was just reread the proposal.
Okay, so 4C is, a contractor shall not make any contribution to any incumbent or to any candidate for elective office of the city of Holyoke in excess of blank per year for the next 4 calendar years following the award of the item or for the duration of the term of any contract, whichever is longer.
so we're actually striking the whole in excess of.
Right, it's gonna say.
It's just shall not make a contribution.
But I'm just, that's what we're, so, shall not make any contributions to the city of Holyoke. Delete in excess of, and leave in for the next 4 calendar years following the award or for the duration of the term of the contract. I
So
can't
that's
remember-
after it's already
I can't remember if we
awarded.
had voted on the $100 or not, so.
I don't think so.
No, we didn't. We were just talking about it.
Okay. So, on the motion for 4C as read, is there somebody making?
So moved.
This is the part about whichever is longer.
Do we have a second?
Oh, what's the whichever is, hold on, a contract shall not,
4 calendar years following the award of the item or for the duration of the term of any
Oh,
contract.
that makes sense. That's about the-
Whichever's longer, the
that's about the
4
length of
or
the
the
contract.
contract.
yep,
4 is probably gonna be longer, because most contracts are only
Yeah.
3 years for a
Right.
maximum.
So on
But
the
4
motion.
year, 4 years would take you through
The next
another
cycle.
election.
now what happens if this contract is renewed? Does this all restart again?
Says that, so that prior 4B says no contract may be renewed, extended, or amended unless it would be allowed under the provisions of the ordinance if it, as if, I should say, as if it were.
Oh, an initial contract? So it just kind of restarts all over again? And then you have the provision in here, or for the duration of the term of any contract anyways. So you kind of got that covered as well
Yeah.
in there.
I guess so the thing, if a contract was renewed though, they won't have been allowed to make any contributions. the
Right.
way of, yeah.
Yep. So we're allowing what, in the year before, is that where the 200,
We have to
1,000?
I just want to do this one, and
Okay.
then we'll do that one. So right now, we have the motion for 4C.
Yep.
All
So,
in favor?
aye.
Aye. So let's go to 4A, where we say, no contract shall be awarded to any person who has made a total contribution of more than X dollars to any individual candidate, so we'll say $200, to any individual candidate for elected office of the city of Holyoke or incumbent in either the calendar year of the application or the calendar year preceding the application, provided, however, that the restriction of eligibility with regard to contributions made prior to the year preceding the application shall not apply to any contribution made in the calendar year preceding the adoption of this ordinance, and shall only go forward beginning with the year of adoption of the ordinance. No contribution made prior to the effective date of this ordinance shall be deemed to give rise to a violation of penalty under this ordinance. So we would have to amend that a little if we wanted to say 200, any
Yeah, or
person,
1,000.
200, any company, 1,000.
Yeah, put it in, do the 200, 1,000 for the
Okay.
company cap.
So no contract shall be awarded to any person who's made a total contribution.
We'll just leave it to
of more than
managing employees.
200, or any, do you want to call it a company or a business? How-
Yeah, I'll
Entity.
figure it out, because I have to go back and kind of clean up. I
Yep.
did this kind
Or
of,
any entity,
I'll figure out the best way to,
well, but you, who has
correct
made
pronoun.
a total contribution of more than 1,000.
right, yeah. I need to go back and take a look at the definitions and make sure everything matches up, but
All right, I just want to
Got
make
where
sure I
you're-
have my notes
Yep.
right.
3.3 going to mimic 4A now, the $200?
3.3 will mimic 4C
3,
for the continuing during the contract.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So no,
so will be 0.
right.
not make any contribution.
Yep.
Same as. Okay. All right, we voted on the 70,000. Do we need to vote on 3.3 to say is the same as 4C?
Yes. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So 3.3 is same as 4C, no donations. I think we've got it. Is there
Yep.
anybody else who sees anything else?
Just the enforcement mechanism for the penalties.
Okay?
Yes. I like the way it's worded, and I like the refund contribution that helps with the, oops, we made a mistake incident, and it's
Yeah.
you give back the money. I'd like to have that structured as, that's great for the first offense.
Okay.
You do it again, I think it's see you later. You know, if somebody accidentally goes over the limit by, you know, you gave 1,200 instead of 1,000 for the company, and this one kind of says you can cure it, but if there should be during the duration of the contract a second violation of this nature that there is no right to cure. It's material breach and see you later.
So that's in section 5. If a contract is awarded, it shall be a material breach of any, of the terms of any contract where the contractor is, that language
Yeah,
needs to
but
be
6
cleaned up.
kind of gives them an out clause.
Why don't we just say one time?
Or you could say prior to the award of the contract, they could correct it. But then once the contract has been awarded, you can't correct it.
There you go. Counselor Bartley?
Well, I just want to go back to section 5 since we're on that one first. So, there's 2 sentences here, and so the first sentence talks about kind of when they're going through the process, and it says, well, you know, mandated disclosure form, well, we found out that they overpaid or overdonated, I should say, and then the city shall deny the award. Then the second sentence talks about, you know, after the contract's awarded, and it says it shall be a material breach. Okay, that's good. and it shall be a violation of this ordinance, oh, okay, that's good. Does that mean that the contract is now rescinded? The city shall rescind it, or what does that mean?
It should be a material breach. And that would have to go hand in hand with the language of our contracts. I mean, we could add that in if that's,
Well, I guess what I'm asking, so the first sentence talks about.
because the
yeah,
contract is what's gonna define.
Right,
what's a
right, well,
breach
I mean,
and-
if they caught them during the process, if they caught them during the application process, then the city can, deny the award. But if they caught them after the contract's been awarded, there's nothing here that says that the contract will be rescinded. And if we're gonna
Okay.
go,
Yeah.
So we
No,
should
we can
add in the
Well, I don't know.
Not
contract,
just a breach, but a rescinding
the
because,
contract shall be rescinded?
can I jump in?
That's
support-
fine, we can
just
change it
to
to
support
clarify.
David's point, and I don't know if he's saying this, but I think where he's going is, just because something's a material breach does not necessarily rescind the agreement.
Right, it would have to be spelled out in the contract, but we
and-
can add, if you wanna have it rescinded, that's fine, we can add it in.
Yeah,
Okay. So, but to clarify to the earlier point, if it is a material breach, but then there is the cure,
I think we need to clarify that too, that if you want it to be, they can only cure, like, when the contract
well, you could say
is
the
awarded,
contract
or
may.
they only get one chance to cure.
Counselor Bartley?
I was just gonna say, in that second sentence in, section 5, you could say that the contract may be rescinded, subject to the, curing.
Okay.
That curative effect, that curative
Yeah,
solution you
that's
have.
fine. And that would usually be what the contract itself
Oh,
would say, that,
okay.
well,
Alright, there you go.
not necessarily in these terms, but usually if there is a breach, you have
Alright.
the opportunity to cure it, so.
right, so in the lead up, the pre-award of the contract, there's gonna be the right to say, look I want to apply for this contract. I already gave $1,000 and I was only allowed to give 200. So I'm requesting a refund of $800 of my money, so I can go apply for this contract, right? Whomever now gives and writes the check for 800, they've now cured. I could live with that.
Okay,
Prior to the award.
Prior to the award.
Okay.
But once you now have the award and and you know what you're supposed to be doing,
Right.
then you go ahead and give 1,000
That's
anyways and say, oops, I got caught. Now let me just have my money back and we can just go happily ever after. I think I'd be more forgiving in the pre-up to the contract than once you actually have the contract. So if you could
sure, yeah, we can.
structure it that way. This way, actually, that's really forgiving because that actually would be your way of getting anybody that would want to apply. All they have to do is ask for a refund, and anybody could apply, theoretically.
Yeah, no one's precluded from applying any longer.
Exactly.
However, if I may, Chair, Bacon.
Counselor Lisi?
So, now, as long as we're keeping this 30 days, would it have to be the whole 1,000 that would have to be requested as a refund? Because what if the candidate incumbent had already spent it? Then they would be responsible for furnishing the refund? I
I
mean,
think they would, no, I think they would, the way I would read this would be,
It'd say
You can request it.
you can
but
request
They
it,
could say,
but,
no, I don't have it.
yeah.
Say you're out of luck.
okay, I just want to make sure,
They're not required to give it back.
No.
but then are they precluded from bidding?
Yes,
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, because they couldn't cure it. I mean, if we go this way.
But it's not them who can cure it. It would be the candidate who can't cure it because,
well, it does, actually, the way it's written, it says, if there is a contribution, the candidate or incumbent shall refund the contribution within 30 days. It says, provided that funds are otherwise available in the campaign account. So,
They could
but
say-
again, I
it's
wouldn't,
alone
I wouldn't want
themselves.
to preclude somebody from bidding if the candidate who they supported can't make them whole. Because it's not their fault, like they're going and putting their best foot forward and trying to follow the letter of the law, but it's the candidate in his or her very competitive election that already spent that money, and it's done, it's gone, and so that business would then be prohibited from bidding on the contract, being considered for the
I don't see too
contract.
many people with zero balances in there.
I have a deficit still. From running an election while being pregnant.
You'll have to keep a reserve if you're getting $1,000 donations. You'll
Yeah.
have to.
You have to give your campaign.
If only you had
your
that problem.
campaign fund a loan to pay back the person. But I mean, I think that would be an unusual situation, but if it came up, there's an opportunity for it to be made known in this language.
Candidate has, I mean, the
Right?
candidate has a month to give it
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Could have a
At the
fundraiser
fundraise.
to pay back the,
And
yeah, I mean, you know,
Do you want to
But-
give them more time to pay it back? Is that,
no,
you
because
want
it would have to
expand
be
the 30
within
days?
it would have to be within the time that the, business wants to bid on something, and we can't put them
Yeah,
in
it
limbo
would-
because of the candidate, is
Right.
what I'm thinking.
I think it's 30 days is
So,
good.
What if it was? What if it was 800? So like, what if they spent? What if the company spent $800? So like, what if they made? So sorry, they made $1,000 of contributions, and the candidate could pay them back at their request $200, so they're not hitting that $1,000 benchmark. How does that scenario play out? Would they still be prohibited?
I don't think so, because they would have made an $800
So-
contribution,
So even
which
if it was
isn't.
even if it's $5, bringing them to $995,
Right,
they're
it's
not
the
hit.
cap of the
Okay,
1,000.
so that's fine, as long as
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
not
yeah. Yeah,
the
it's
full
what-
1,000.
No.
No.
As long as it's not the full 1,000, that's fine.
No.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's not, it's
It's the
saying the
difference.
contribution in violation, so the part so if they gave 1,200, the part that's in violation
Would just be
is
200.
The 200. I mean,
That's
that's how
fine.
I would.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
you don't, right, exactly.
difference.
It's just the portion that's
Right, because you're not
over the
totally-
limit.
Yeah, you're not totally barred from.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
So are we good with the additional language
Yeah.
to the purchasing department ordinance amendments
Mm-hmm.
as amended?
Yeah, I
Well,
like
so-
it.
So,
Well,
But are you
this is
taking-
actually the pay-to-play that we've been talking about, right?
right.
And we're gonna
but-
add it as
but the
a section in
pay-to-play
this.
is a portion of
Right,
this.
and so we're gonna take out those 4 things and say they just have to be somehow advertised, not competitive.
Well, no.
Oh, wait, we
Oh, yeah,
didn't
no, we
quite
need to go back to
We
that.
That's what I'm
didn't do an
saying.
official
Okay.
anything on that
Okay.
yet.
We didn't do
Okay.
anything on, we didn't
So,
do anything on
but before
the,
we do that, can I get a motion on the amended language of pay-to-play to be added to the purchasing department
so
ordinance?
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
So now we gotta go to 2, 3, 3, 4.
correct. And we have to decide if we like it better leaving it in the competitive bid process, or if we wish to take them back out and have them covered under this new language we just added. To me, it's sort of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but
I think the competitive bid process is more fair and transparent, and the city gets the better deal in the long run.
tend to agree. I like competitive process. I don't know.
The only one,
Are we still gonna have adequate documentation with the changes we made on this, from your point of view,
What do you mean?
for the procurement? Because it raises the amounts to higher amounts.
Right, to match up with the,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
the only one I'm gonna ask about is that section 2, 3, 3, 4, section 3 regarding towing and storage of motor vehicles, that be removed under competitive and put under notice, that other notice provision,
okay.
Where are you? I'm sorry.
2, 3, 3, 4. So it's third page in, section D.
Why is that?
Because in order to make towing and storage of motor vehicles subject to pay to play, we have to take it out of the competitive section, put it to the notice section. That's why I would like to,
What section?
this is 2334.
I know that part. Where do you want to put it?
Okay,
Oh,
so
we don't
this
have
is
that
what.
yet.
We don't have that yet, but that's what we're gonna create, a new section on, that there'll be a notice requirement
Okay, so
for towing and storage of motor vehicles.
what section would that be
I don't know.
properly?
I'm gonna have to look at it.
All right, so.
To be TBD,
All right, so I'm gonna put, then,
That's the only way we can do
because
that.
they gotta fit in the whole, I mean.
I'm just gonna put a note for myself on that
Otherwise, this
page.
is no competitive on this one. So we can't put it in here, we gotta fix that loophole. Because right now, we're adding this section 3 to competitive, but pay to play excludes competitive.
Correct.
So I'm trying to achieve what we kind of want with this without making it exempt to pay to play. And so if we require that he has to put out a solicitation, he gets to pick, but he's picking now anyways, under competitive.
Right.
So it's kind of a distinction without a difference, to be
Okay,
honest with you.
so then for
It'll be subject to pay to play.
2-334.3, we are adding, the proposal is to add language that requires notice of contract opportunity.
Right.
Is that a fair way to say
That's
it?
it, yeah.
Opportunity, and that will be subject to the pay-to-play.
Well, yeah, automatically it will be because.
I'm just writing that note
Right.
kind of for myself.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, no, and I'll
It's
make
not under
that
one of the
clear.
exclusions.
Yeah. It's gotta be, because a lot of this, I can figure it out because
So-
a lot of the sections are being deleted, so we'll,
so it requires
Work it on.
notice of contract opportunity, and then it just defines that towing as one of the ones that would be included under there because it is exempt.
right,
So it would be that and all other exempt contracts that
Right.
would apply.
right.
Counselor Bartley?
So I guess, Kara, what you're saying is that, or maybe Kevin's saying this, is by doing it this way, as you suggest, it takes away the incentive, in other words, to favor somebody, because the competitive bidding is, it's supposed to be egalitarian, right? So we all have a fair shot to, if we're in that business, to bid on it. So what you're saying, but by taking it out of that, you're saying you put under notice, you're confident that there's no incentive to try to favor one vendor over another. I just think hypothetically, I don't want to say any names in this town because it just doesn't make sense, but hypothetically, if I'm in the executive and I really don't want to give a bid to a
Somebody.
well-known local vendor because I really,
Yeah, for whatever reason.
for whatever reason, it just put money aside. Just because I just really I dislike the color of this person's building. Just say, because that's just my preference. Just say it's a orange building, okay? And I just really
Let me give you, I see where you're going.
Counselor Jordan?
Thank you. With respect to towing, and only them. Now, in the esoteric, for procurement, we always think of, I want to do X, and I want to go out and get the lowest qualified bidder. So ideally, I get proposal A, I'll do it for $22. Proposal B, I'll do it for 18, and proposal 3, I'll do it for 16. And you look at them and they say, okay, they're all qualified, so I'm going to pick number 16 because he's the cheapest. That's great. Towing doesn't work that way. All their rates are set entirely by statute. So proposal A is X, proposal B is X, and proposal C is X. It's just a question of, to whom do I like? And now what I'm trying to avoid is proposal A gave me X, proposal B gave me Y, and proposal C gave me 0. And now I have to, really study this. I have to really concentrate on who I'm going to pick. And my concern is that I don't want to put in a situation where that, and I pray it's not, but I don't even want that to enter into the calculus at all. So if I believe competitive bidding is designed, like we have outside counsel here, good one to be in competitive. Don't think we should take that out. I'll risk campaign donation restriction on that because lawyer A could charge $180 an hour, lawyer B could charge $150 an hour, lawyer C could say, I'm gonna be this, and this. So there's a way to maneuver, and I also feel lawyers have, I would hope, certain ethical duties on all of these things.
Could I interject just
Sure.
for a minute?
Yep.
And I think the other difference is there's more than one towing contract. It's not like you're getting 5 bids and you're picking one.
Right.
There's more than one.
Could pick as many as you want theoretically, and they
Yeah.
do a rotational system.
Right. So I just think it makes it different that way too.
So my only point is, in competitive, you're getting 3 people saying the same thing, basically, and the mayor is picking one. Whereas, if you did solicitation, where he just says, okay, all the towing companies of America, I'm interested in picking one, send me your bid. Then at least if I'm Joe, the aspiring tow company, I could at least send a bid to the mayor. He may say, hey, hit the road. But he could say, hit the road over here. Because quite frankly, what the hell there is no real low bidder in a tow competitive contract because all the rates are the same.
Right. I mean,
It's totally subjective.
right. And at the end of the day, there's no way that anything that we create is going to compel the mayor to pick any company. I mean, and that's not our goal.
But
Our
at
goal
least-
is just to
yeah.
make it a level playing ground.
Exactly.
Right,
And,
so-
and the other thing that I like about at least the notice piece, instead of saying, let's do nothing, it's the middle ground of saying, at least people even know that he's gonna be
There's an
making this
opportunity.
decision, that there at least is an opportunity. Because I think one of the concerns we've heard is, how do I even get in? How do I even get an opportunity to know that this decision is being made?
Okay, so can you make that into a motion for the language?
Okay, so the motion is to take towing out of section 3 under 2334, D3, and move it to a new section on the mayor has an affirmative requirement to make notice of when he is going to award a towing contract to solicit bids of, or not bids, but solicit interest of prospective people to be chosen.
And that would also-
Subject to the law department's wording on that.
And that would also apply to all exempt contracts, not just towing. It would apply,
Do we have any other, what's left for
Wouldn't-
exempt contracts?
I mean, there's quite a few other exemptions.
so I'm just saying.
That would be nice.
If we're creating language that says we have to give notice of a contract opportunity, we shouldn't just pick out one contract. We should say all,
Well, that would be nice.
all exempt contracts.
I didn't realize there was a whole list left.
I guess the tricky part is that some of them, in some ways, it's easier to just say towing because, I mean, some of the other exempt ones, for example, are a transaction with the Commonwealth. I mean, is what it is. We're not gonna advertise an
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
intergovernmental agreement.
All right.
You know, again, like, those are gonna be specific to the
Yeah.
contracts between agencies, boards of the city or town, so like a
Okay.
contract with HEDIC,
Yeah, yeah.
special education.
So we're better off just to leave it alone?
Just name the towing one.
I just thought there were more.
Probably, I mean, if
I mean,
that's
if you
what
think
you're,
there's another one that makes sense, let's add them.
I mean, there are other ones under the exemptions, there's labor relation, accountants, physicians, healthcare, similar type.
Should be the same. We shouldn't, I just think if we're gonna do this, we shouldn't pick one arena. We should either do them all.
I agree.
Or not do it. But you
mean-
can't just pick on one thing.
Yeah, let's do it. So all exempt to be at least a notice requirement.
Is it just one that is exempt under this set of procurement laws? Because it seems that any other of the exemptions from the competitive process may be subject to different, regulations.
Well,
Well,
if there's one
she
you
was
have to
just
leave out.
reading off medical and accounting and some other things that on the face of them would be the same as towing.
I mean, you could
Yeah.
probably just add in the notice requirement under the pay-to-play section, because those are gonna go, all the exempt contracts are gonna be subject to the
Yes. And I
pay-to-play,
think
so
if
you
we
can add
need
in
an
the,
accountant, it should be the same thing. There should be a notice.
notice
You don't
as
just
part
call
of
up,
that.
you know.
That's fine.
Yeah. And
Okay.
for- Yeah.
We'll leave it to your judgment on that. I think you know what we're talking about.
Particularly auditors. You know, that should be a notice and a bid. Shouldn't have the same auditor for 30 years auditing, doing your annual audit. That's like a no-no in business.
Could we word the notice to say unless it's one of the contracts that's with, another government or something? Because that just
Yeah.
seems, we have a lot of contracts with,
Yeah.
okay,
we can leave that out.
okay.
Yeah.
And that would basically be with, the Commonwealth, and with other cities or towns, with agencies within, not even agencies,
Right.
boards of the city. Okay. I think that'll cover the federal government.
Okay, so what is the motion we have before us now?
Okay, the motion, again, is that 2-334, section D3, be removed, deleted from the competitive process, and put under the alternative notice requirement in another section.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, but I want to make a point.
Counselor Bartley?
Okay, yeah, I'll second. If we're gonna do this, at some point when we're not here, it might be confusing to a future administration saying, well, geez, it's not in the competitive bid process. Why did they do that? It'd be nice if we had some kind of language, like a legislative history or something in there to explain to a future body why we didn't include it, why we're taking us out of this procurement part, because we're saying, I think, in some, that we want to adhere to high ethical standards, we want to avoid pay-to-play,
Yep.
and yet the bottom line is we want to have a fair playing field for everybody.
Right.
So,
Why don't we put it, I
But-
think that,
but-
yeah.
If
Well, I think when
may,
we
just-
put it all together,
Just
it's
to
gonna
your
make more.
point, the towing is not in the current procurement ordinance.
No, it just falls under.
This was our draft that we had added it to. Right now, it's not in it. This is just our draft.
gotcha.
So we're just putting it we're
What if
leaving
they-
it where it is what we're doing.
What if
But
they
actually,
put
we're
it-
doing more than where it is, because
Right,
we're gonna
'cause it's
create
in
this new affirmative notice requirement.
Correct, but we're not taking it out from somewhere that it
Okay,
was
so
in.
then let me change my words.
It's not current law.
Okay, let me change my words. Then, let me do it the opposite. Why aren't we putting it in there? I want to explain why we didn't put it in there.
Okay.
Does that make
Okay.
better sense?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
so it would come under the purpose part of
Yes, and I think.
pay to play?
I think his point's an excellent one. I think Dave's point's
Wherever,
excellent.
yeah, that sounds
But to call, okay.
perfect.
I mean, that's not usually included,
What?
to call out a reason behind one decision. And then, what if, I was gonna say, what if we put it all together so that you can see
Yeah.
everything, and then if you still think further clarification, because I think I understand what Kevin's saying. I think when it's all put together and put in the ordinance, it'll be easier to
think it'll
follow,
flow.
because they're separate documents right now, and we're talking about them a little bit separately. But, I mean, I can get that done and then send it to you.
Sure.
And,
Then see if you feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Now we can always add more.
right, you can always change it.
Counselor Lisi?
Thank you. What's the noticing process for when items go out to bid? Is there a public listing, public notification?
If it goes out to bid because it's over 30, yeah, I don't,
Because of the
it
30.
would be under 30B. It's published in the Central Register. I don't know, I just don't know, obviously, that,
But there is some sort of advertising
Oh,
and
yeah.
notice that takes
Yeah.
place. So, I mean, I'm gonna just put it out there. I think it would be a lot neater and cleaner and logical to keep all of the contracts under the competitive bid process and really sidebar the pay-to-play ordinance for the time being. You know, as I said, I think that the 30B process is competitive, it's fair, it's transparent, there's noticing, and the city's going to make out better in the end.
So create it, but don't apply it to anything.
I would say at this point in time, if we don't have anything that would be outside of that 30B process, then I don't think we would need to enact it. I think that we explored it with the idea that we needed to control the campaign contributions because there would be some subset of contracts that wouldn't be subject to the competitive bid process of 30B, but if we put everything under that 30B title that we have the ability to control, then I think that the pay to play, I know it seems attractive, but I feel like it is unnecessary if we go in a straightforward route, keep everybody that is, a procured contract under that competitive bid process.
But you do understand, as it relates to towing, all the bids are identical. So when you say competitive bidding, as I tried to give the illustration earlier, was traditionally we think of 3 bids, 3 different amounts, right? And you pick the lowest qualified bidder. That's the traditional process. With towing, it's me at X, you at X, and company 3 at X. They're all the same. It's just a question of who do I like more for customer service, or maybe a few little giveaways like, you'll sponsor Dean to do a car donor program
Don't the
or some of these
30B
other.
laws require you to take the lowest bid? And if there's no lowest bid, then it has to be rebid?
well,
Well,
but it would
there
be
is no lowest
it would be
bid.
a request for proposals, and you would have to take the most qualified and responsive bidder, so you would have to write the request for proposals with everything that you want. I mean, in the context of towing, that it's, provide heavy and light duty towing, that you have X number of trucks that you can respond in X number of minutes, that you have this equipment, that equipment, your storage facility looks like this, and you set them up to say most responsive, non-responsive, so.
So, if I may,
That-
Karen,
yeah.
so you had read off some other arenas that would also be under the pay-to-play
Right, I mean, there's
language,
still, yeah.
should we adopt it, which would include accounting, medical, this or that. So maybe when you give us the language, you could give us the rest, because I don't think I'd feel totally comfortable just talking about one item either, but I don't think we are, I just think we don't know what they all are. And
Right.
so.
Yeah, I think I had given you the list, but I
Maybe you
can
did.
send it again.
Maybe
with all
you
the-
did.
I mean, the only
and
reason-
I may have it in here.
No, that's what I can
just-
resend, so you can see it, yep.
Yeah, because I think there's been a lot of detail
Yeah.
here. But I really appreciate all the work you've done on this. I think this is good language.
I think this is wonderful.
And-
I would want to point out, Madam Chair, just in fairness, we're not singling out towing. We're just stating the obvious, which is, those are where the campaign donations are. I mean, this has been widely reported in the newspaper.
And I'm not
It's the only
saying we
reason.
are.
We're
I'm
not trying to
just
single them
saying-
out.
I'm just saying, we just want to know which is and which isn't. That's all.
The only other thing I would say too, for some of these exceptions, because I'm just looking at the pay-to-play, I mean, while we're gonna say it applies to all exempt contracts, it still has to be over $70,000 too.
Right.
So, I mean, some of the exemptions, because I'm just looking, it's a contract for advertising of required notices, which is like your public hearings, but that's not $70,000, so the smaller thing, that's not gonna be an issue.
It
It's only
wouldn't
gonna be-
apply.
Yeah.
But like for an accounting firm, that could easily apply.
Right, it's similar
There's
things
a
like
number of
that,
things,
like,
medical,
Yeah,
under
archi-
whatever circumstances that might arise. And I mean,
How do
to
we
me,
pick Melanson Heath?
well, right, and to me, there's been so many things just happening and people are like, how did that happen? That I think we just want to have some transparency and know what's going on. So anyway, we're good with this.
Do you need a motion now to
I
just send this all
need,
to the law department for a final version?
hang
Yeah,
on.
that sounds good.
We're clean on your deletion and addition of the towing.
Yep.
I think we need a final vote on that, because then we had discussion and Rebecca proposed to remove it. You had an
A motion.
motion.
That was seconded.
Yes, and then Rebecca offered an amendment or an idea of setting it aside. So we
She was
still,
just basically saying, don't.
right, but we
Yeah.
still have to vote on your
Okay.
motion. So all in favor of the motion on the language for the draft amendments dated June 28th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So now I would entertain a motion to recommend the amended language for the purchasing department ordinance as amended and to be put into legal form or updated by Kara in the legal department. To then, do you want it to come back to committee for a final review because we have a number of amendments?
Yeah, we have one more meeting before the next time we can
Yeah.
vote on this anyway, so.
And then
Yeah,
come-
and I'll try and get it to you in advance of that,
for our
so you
next
can look at.
ordinance
Yeah, I'll
meeting,
get it
which
to you
is,
before.
what, last
So
Tuesday in July.
if somebody will make a motion on the full amended language?
I make a motion that we adopt with the full amended language, subject to a final review at our next meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, great job.
Okay,
So that takes
moving
care of-
on to item 9, which we did get emails from Kara today.
Yes.
Is that the drone?
Drone.
I'll accept a motion.
Motion to take it off the table?
All in favor? Aye. This order is ordered that Chapter 54 of the Holyoke Code of Ordinances be amended to make it unlawful to use a drone to fly over the private property of another without their prior written consent. They shall also be prohibited from flying over any municipal property without the prior written consent of the city. A violation shall be subject to a fine. A drone shall be defined as any unmanned aerial system. Now, at our last meeting, we had all agreed to send Kara any recommendations or thoughts we had up after having an opportunity to review the language that she had provided to us at the meeting. So I know a couple of us gave Kara feedback, and I know today she sent us,
Do you have a printout of what you emailed today?
I have one.
I have my iPad.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
I thought you don't have copies.
I didn't print out what you sent.
I didn't print it either.
I saw it. It looked good, but I was just
I'd
saying.
asked Ryan to make copies of.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I did see that, but I didn't see it till later myself, so.
I have one.
Should we be looking at the memo?
Yeah, so I did, the memo that I did was just kind of that, it was more to help me organize things, but the outline of the various regulations and then the draft.
Which is most useful to look at first? The,
Maybe the memo, just to quickly,
okay.
Go
Just because I can
over-
only open one at a time.
okay. I mean, basically, what I think you can do is, adopt language that the committee agrees upon. And then what I found in my research, I spoke with the Attorney General's office, their municipal law unit, who has not reviewed any bylaw relative to drones. But they referred me to the Mass Aeronautics Commission, which does have to review any bylaws relative to aeronautics. And basically, the Aeronautics Commission is in the midst of proposing regulations which will require that they review any bylaws or ordinances relative to drones. And that regulation likely will be retroactive. So, their counsel that I spoke with suggested that it would be a good idea that we send them
Get
whatever
their blessing in advance.
I think that's
we would like
great.
to adopt. So, I mean, I think that's
Okay.
a short version of where things are, because the new rule perhaps made it less clear about what you can and can't do. I mean, I guess
I know.
they,
Right.
A lot of it was similar, but it was like still fuzzy.
Yeah, and the FAA did not include a preemption provision in there, so but now they've gone and regulated what can fly in this 400 feet or less, which traditionally they didn't, and the thought was that cities and towns could, but now they have. So it's not.
So if the MAA, which is somehow of the same genre as the FAA, is that like a subdivision of the FAA?
No, the Aeronautics Commission is part of the DOT.
Okay.
And would regulate,
But if MAA said it was okay, would that be usually FAA would abide
I think
by
what they're gonna review is whether they believe it would be preempted by state or federal law. So, I don't know, they're probably gonna give us more of an opinion on it, I would imagine, and we'll have to see, but,
So we should pass reasonably what we want,
right,
and
and
then
we'll
you
send
send it to you, and then you go sit with them and go through it piece by
We'll
piece.
send it to them and see, I don't know how long it'll take to get a response back, but,
Yeah, your memo
So-
actually says that mass law requires the commission's approval of bylaws that affect aeronautics, right? So you're.
aeronautics, so technically, and I will say, the council said technically it doesn't apply to drones, but they are looking at promulgating regulations that will specifically say any drones.
Interesting.
And he said, I mean, I asked how long the regulation, he said it could be actually fairly soon, within months.
Sure, they're
a
starting to
month or
hear
so.
this from other communities.
Right, right.
Okay, drones are not aeronautics?
No.
I didn't look at all I'm gonna guess the Aeronautics Commission regulates, I looked at their statute a little bit. It's written in terms of, airports and probably aircraft, and it doesn't specifically say drones or unmanned aircraft.
I'll bet you it's with weights greater than 55 pounds.
Probably,
Yeah,
and
under
probably
55
higher
pounds.
airspace, and so technically, they probably don't have, right now, but, so that's why they're proposing those regulations, and the AG's office said if they had a bylaw to review, that would probably be their position, that it needs to go through the Aeronautics Commission.
And just so the public's clear, we're saying for regulations 400 feet or below, that's what the city ordinance can control, am I right, Madam Chair, in that?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
And above 400 feet, Madam Chair?
FAA.
Thank you, all right.
I don't even know if these little drones can go, well, maybe they can. I don't know, I've learned a lot about drones in the past week, so.
That is high, though. 400 feet is 20 stories.
But when you think, though, a size of a thing, 50
It was
pounds,
just under 400 feet.
there could be
the
hundreds
smokestack
of them
downtown. Yes.
zipping around
Well,
under 400 feet.
Well, you're getting to a point
365
where
feet.
some of these companies are talking about making deliveries with drones.
Right, but those, interestingly, those, I guess, aren't, one of the articles I read, those aren't allowed right now because the FAA rules say that they have to be pilot controlled. And so those ideas of like Amazon delivering wouldn't be pilot controlled.
They have to be
because I
line
think
of
they
sight
just like,
and all that
yeah.
stuff, too. Yeah.
If they, so I guess if you could, well, it probably can't fly that, but like autonomous ones that leave from like Amazon and come deliver are not
Amazing.
pilot
It's like the
controlled, I don't
Jetsons.
know.
It's
They're like-
crazy.
But here's the thing, in the new part that we were just sent, just by way of information, is they have a fly for fun category and they have a fly for work category, and they're under different legal regulatory.
Right, so that
systems.
new rule is the
Yeah.
fly for the commercial flying of
Right,
it. And
right.
this is where it's
See?
really confusing, because they're similar requirements, but
But, yeah,
And the question is, yeah, see, flying for commercial use includes providing aerial surveys and photography services, or incident to a business, real estate and roof
Right.
inspection. See,
Oh, nice.
I'm concerned about those because I still continue to be of the opinion that, you know, my next door neighbor wants to sell their house, so they're gonna go, let's fly a drone over, you know, my house. And I'm sitting in my backyard and I've got, you know, some, you know, drone hovering over me, taking my photo without my consent. It's like, come on. You know, it's like, at what point does there become reasonable expectation of privacy at certain points too, you know?
and I think that's
mean-
what we're aiming for
Yeah, I
with the
mean-
ordinance. Because I was shocked when I read the example that A neighbor took pictures of a neighbor inside their home, published them. It went to court, and they were found to be legal because they were legally situated when they took the pictures.
Interesting.
And I was stunned when I read that, because I would think the person in their own home would have a right to a reasonable expectation of privacy.
In the criminal context, for sure.
Well, and that's,
but-
yeah, and that's where there are still some common law remedies. You know, if the drone is arguably trespassing
Right.
or
Right,
if
but
it
the
crashes
drone-
into you, it's.
Traditionally, 400 feet of your home is,
Right. But in
Well,
this example,
it's
the
kind of-
drone,
But that's where, because the FAA never regulated it, technically the navigable airspace is from the ground up. And the FAA never went into that under 400 feet, but now they have. And so that was what Northampton's resolution was basically asking the government not
Do
to
that.
get into that area for this reason, because there could now be an argument that
Big
it's
Brother is watching
preempted
at all
from.
times.
well, you know, and
But-
this is a good point. We talk about the sort of, you know, the 16-year-old kid who goes to Toys R Us and buys a drone and is goofing around, you know, taking photos of all his neighbors. There's that. But one has to consider, do we really want the police flying drones over your backyard too? Taking photos of you surreptitiously without your consent either. There's definitely concerns about that from a search and seizure and perspective too. I'm sure the courts will end up with all that, you know, how admissible is that information? I'm probably Northampton. I remember I had one individual, you know, I think her concern was NSA, you know, flying over her house or people's homes and things of this nature too, which, you know, I would hope that wouldn't happen, but
television's probably.
I don't think NSA would be too interested in my house, but,
But anyway, so
let's pass
so we
what we
gave-
think we want and then let them check it out and
we
see where
gave
we're at.
Kara some feedback, and now Kara's given us,
I didn't make very many changes from what Kevin, I added
because
in.
you put it into more formal language
Yeah.
than I had.
Okay, so X out of that and now go to the draft
hang on.
ordinance that she has.
I added in a purpose at the beginning. I changed the scope a little bit to say that it would be drones that weigh less than 55 pounds and are flown
Yep,
below 400 feet. And then added the penalties.
I think we should give it a shot.
yeah, so let's go with that, Kara.
Okay, and
We're
then,
just trying
I
to
mean, at this
protect
point, I
private
think,
property. So if you're in your backyard, you have the reasonable expectation, nobody can take pictures and post them on Facebook
I mean, the
and
rest of these.
everywhere else.
Oh, you're absolutely right. The other restrictions I put in there are all come right out of the FAA final rule on, you know, when you can land, when you can do, you know, this, that, and
I just
another
wanna make an
thing.
amendment, just a quick one to Kara's.
Okay.
So in her, I'm just in the purpose section.
Yep.
So it says according, Madam Chair, is that okay?
Sure, Council Bartley.
Okay, so accordingly, the city of Holyoke seeks to make sure that drones are operated in such a manner so as to protect the privacy and proper interests of the landowners. I just want to see some, in that little clause, Kara and Madam Chair, I just want to see the, protect the interests of the municipality reference too, because I think that's what the maker of the order was talking about as well, flying, you can't fly over
Public land,
public property, yeah.
Okay.
about city, yeah.
So I just want to make some reference to the municipality's interest being protected.
So add City of Holyoke.
Been there, wasn't it?
No, just in that little purpose section, Rebecca, says
Yeah,
accordingly.
landowners and the municipality.
Municipal property,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Okay, I second that motion.
Yeah,
All in favor of that amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Kara, just to Counselor Bartley's point, which is a really good one, is,
Yes, Councilor Jordan.
oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
We're getting very
I
informal
get,
tonight.
thank you. I get very zealous. People flying over schools, people flying over sporting events, people, you know, it's one thing where you have somebody says, I want to fly a kite, and they're going all over the park, and, you know, but then you get the 55, or in this case, the 54-pound drone, and there's a whole sporting event, and, you know, they got everybody in the football field on the stands, and I'm here, and I'm going to see the touchdowns made, right? And I'm all set, and I'm hovering about 100 feet over the football field and boo, boom, and it lands right on somebody's head.
Yeah.
Okay?
Or
What,
even buzzing the field.
yeah, what happens then? I mean, who's liable for that?
Well, I mean, I think that's where it comes back to, I think.
I want you to ask this MAA all those type
Well,
of questions,
yeah,
like
I mean,
what can
that
the
he did-
municipality?
He talked about that, we talked about that, and that was where he said there are already, I mean, that's an assault and battery from the drone operator on the injury that it caused, so, I mean, there are, those same things already apply in a lot of these cases. The same,
Okay.
just like if it was, no different if it was, if you're sitting in your backyard and the drone landed on your head, it would be assault and battery. And likewise, if you were to shoot down a drone over your yard, it might be destruction
shooting?
of property, so.
Yeah.
That when I spoke with council, he did say, you know, cities want to regulate this, but there are a lot of common law remedies that are available.
Counselor
Fight the new
Bartley?
technology.
So just right along with that point, section 4, C, 7.
Yeah.
Not operate over any property owned by the city of Holyoke unless prior written consent has been obtained by the city of Holyoke.
Should be from, right?
Yeah, but, okay, so I just had 2 points on that one, if I could, Madam Chair. So
Sure.
one is, the city of Holyoke, does that, when you say that, that includes the waterworks and the gas and electric and the school department? That's everybody, right? Or,
Property owned by the city.
Oh, well, the gas and electric is probably separate.
City
You
of,
could change it to say the city of Holyoke or,
well, I'm just saying, I think it should be,
just wanting-
it should be the
For,
G and E, the waterworks, the school board, school department, the municipality, anybody else I'm forgetting? So.
just to
that-
be sure it's all inclusive.
Schools are definitely city
the schools would be.
So that would be one point I just want to make there. And then the other
You
one,
want to make that as an amendment?
okay,
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
okay. Then the other point, and I haven't reached the part yet, it says unless prior written consent has been obtained by the city of Holyoke. So, Kara, I haven't gotten there yet, but who's providing the written consent, and to whom do they apply for written consent?
Wouldn't they have to go to the mayor?
Well, if you're adding, I mean, the waterworks or gas and electric would be those boards.
I mean, we don't need to spell that out in the ordinance. The city can interpret it for itself,
Would
what they
be,
believe
I
is
mean,
their
the
own
mayor
requisite
would be.
Wouldn't it be
authority.
the mayor usually?
Or, I mean, the school department obviously owns school property, so that's Park and Rec Commission. There's not gonna be if it's just straight up City of Holyoke, it would be probably the mayor.
Right.
But I mean, I will say, I guess, what I would suggest at this point before getting too far into the details is to have it reviewed and see,
Yeah.
because if it
Sounds
comes
good.
back and they say, well, and I do think it is somewhat likely that the flight where you can fly they may say is preempted, but if it is allowed, then I think you could come back and work out some of those details that don't have anything to do with.
The only thing I would say is if they come back and say something is preempted, just let us know what they're preempting it with.
Oh, yeah, no,
I mean, if
definitely.
they say,
I would
well,
ask them for a written,
I
hopefully they'll
doubt
give
they're
us a written.
ultimately gonna say, you can just fly over anybody's house at any time with, when you think of people having real property, services, that's with the consent of the owner, you're photographing.
No, I'll ask them to give us a
Yeah.
written opinion that we can.
All set.
Also?
And the only other point that I wanted to just check in if it comes up when you're going back and forth on this, is in that example, apparently because the drone was legally located when it took the pictures of the person inside their own home, the person could not only legally have the pictures, they were able to legally publish the pictures. That was the part that I found stunning. But it seemed to be based on the notion that the drone was legally located when it took the pictures. So it was like, basically, if you want to be in your own home and you don't want somebody to take a picture and be able to publish it, you better have all your shades all the way down. which is a little bit of a creepy feeling, but
It was from,
it's in the example of the papers we had, I don't remember.
it was in the opinion from Cambridge.
Yeah.
And they never did adopt any ordinance, I asked there.
But,
Yeah, it was, I can pull that, I didn't read that case, but it was from New York.
New York, I didn't read the whole case, I just read what
Right.
was in what we got, and I was like, ooh.
Record, right? My father did private investigations for a long time, so he would often use concealed cameras. And as long as you're in public, so he had to know the law. As long as you're in public, there's the reasonable expectation that anybody could be taking your photo at any
And I
point in
get that
time.
part.
This was in New York, so I'm very surprised actually to hear that even though the photographer is in a public space and you're in your home,
No, the photographer was in his, so it
His
says
home.
defendant's act of photographing plaintiffs in their home from his own home.
He was in his house
And later
taking a
publishing
picture.
said photographs did not violate New York's invasion of privacy statute, and such conduct was protected speech
I
under the
was
First
stunned
Amendment.
to read that.
So it was from his own.
So you could have out your window the high-powered zoom
Yup.
lens.
Sounds like that's
If your
what,
shade is correct, it was fair game. That was creepy. I'm sorry. That was just,
I know that there's criminal cases that police,
all right. We have to, we
Cannot
do have 4
use-
more items.
technology not available to the general public to
Okay,
see people in their homes.
okay. So thank you, everybody who gave
We need a
feedback
motion to send that to
on the drones, and so now we need a motion to move our amended language.
So I'll move that we receive it, approve it as amended, but refer to Kara to review it by the MAA, and then have us do a final review of our next meeting.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all very much. And just to be, going back to our suspended rules 3 through 8, that item remains tabled. You know, the one we took up under suspended rules and we've referred it back? So just, yeah. And so this item will remain, so,
On the table.
I'll, did we, everybody vote already? Okay, so that item remains tabled also, to come back to committee. Okay. So I'll take a motion on item 10.
Motion to remove it from the table?
All in favor?
Aye.
So this order was that our ordinances be reviewed to revise language to prevent panhandling at gateways to our city and other locations. This activity does not promote a business-friendly environment. Consider adding language that panhandlers be required to obtain a permit from the municipal police department, that it is a crime to panhandle in commercial areas as well as within 50 feet of any bank or automated teller machine, and that it is considered a crime for panhandlers to make false or untrue statements or to disguise themselves to solicit money or to use money obtained for a claim of a specific purpose, for example, food, to be spent on anything else. So the last time we took this up, we narrowed the focus of it extremely in light of current legal challenges and results of court filings. And so we narrowed it all the way down to creating an ordinance where anyone soliciting money has to go and obtain a permit from the municipal police department. And so we referred that to Kara last time to just come back to us with language to accomplish that.
and I guess I need a little more time on that one. I went back and looked at the cases that were here in Massachusetts from Worcester and Lowell didn't have any kind of permit or registration requirements as far as I could tell. But there is another case, the city of Akron was just sued by the ACLU in May, and part of theirs is a registration requirement. So I wanted to take another look at that. I like I said last time, or maybe I didn't say, but I've been thinking about this. I think it really comes down to the enforcement of how, because I think on its face, obviously, if you're requiring everybody who's soliciting donations to register, that's fine. On its face, it's totally content neutral, but as soon as the police enforce it against 3 panhandlers and no charitable, no Girl Scouts
Right, it
or
would have to be consistent.
whoever, then there's gonna be an issue, so I guess you need
Disparate
to figure
treatment.
out, yeah.
Has to be neutral on its face and
Well,
neutral
and
on
then the
its
enforcement,
too,
because that's
yeah.
basically what the lawsuit against Akron is saying, that one of the registration is one of the problems, so,
Akron, Ohio, is that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
yeah. So this was just filed in May, but part of what they do specifically cite is the requirements. They're saying it's essentially an undue burden to have to register with the police department.
Well, then all the people who have to get permits for tag sales should file suit too.
New burden.
I mean, really?
They're gonna argue that's not protected free speech.
Right, so what
Protected free
yeah.
speech, it has the highest standard, has to be narrowly tailored, has to have, compelling government interest. It's got, on the constitutional law side, it's got the highest scrutiny, strict scrutiny, any infringement of free speech, That's what they're gonna argue.
I mean, in this case, it looks like the ordinance goes beyond just the registration, so that's why, I can take a closer look at it. But they do say, they say the registration requirement prevents anonymous speech, deters individuals who are wary of talking to the police or sharing their identity. But it has other restrictions as far as where they can
But
do
if they're in the
this
public
and-
place, we can take their picture and know who they are.
with the drone.
That's
Or-
right,
Or in their house if you took it from your house.
right.
And I guess the other thing would be,
But they're homeless, so you can't take it from their house.
and they let you know that it's crafted with the intent of targeting panhandlers. So I can take another closer look at this and
Well, right,
see
and I
what
agree,
else.
just like the last discussion we were having under the contracting, that it would have to be equitable.
Yeah, yeah. And I had mentioned after the last meeting to the chief of police, and I can talk with him further about it
Okay,
as well.
so,
My only point I would make on this is, I think at some day, somewhere, sometime, we'll definitely want to do something with all of this. But the whole thing is so murky and messy, it's good to allow all these other cities to be the guinea pig.
Yeah, I kind of
Until
agree.
some superior, Supreme Judicial Court of Mass or SJ, or the Supreme Court of the United States just spells it all out and says, this is what you guys can do. It's
Yeah, and
almost-
unfortunately,
you have
they
to really
haven't.
tread so carefully that who the hell wants to defend a lawsuit on something like this, these communities are now gonna be spending all kinds of money defending these lawsuits. When we can allow all these headaches to be somebody else's headache, and then at the end, we can tailor ours to whatever ultimately turns out to be legal. Because there's gonna be something allowed. It's just, what's the something?
Yeah, and
Is
unfortunately,
it
no.
aggressive
Yeah.
panhandling? Is it a permitting? Is it, we already know what, probably never will be, but.
And that's where I think I said the last time the courts are just striking these down, but unfortunately, they're not really telling you what you
What you
can
can
do.
do.
So you're just left with trying to come up with it, and then the next case
Yeah.
comes up with that and sues over that, so.
right, but the puzzling thing is, you have communities where certain activities are rampant, and you have other communities where it's non-existent. And so there's obviously something different happening from one community to another. Let us just say that. Regardless of what is or isn't in ordinance. I don't know. No. Something different is happening.
It's just different locations. It's not at
They
the
like the
gateways.
Walmart over there. I
That
do say
is,
that.
not as.
Not as much as
much.
here, but still, they're.
Have you walked
mean, there's-
around downtown Northampton?
There are
It's like
distinct differences.
Every 3 feet.
Well, and it's creating huge problems in that community. Economic issues and the like, which is, I think, why they're trying to address it too, to some degree. But anyway, so, in the moment, I think I would accept a motion to table, so
Yeah, I'll
Kara
get
can
back to you for the
continue
next.
to do her research. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion to take up item 11.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ordered that the city council review the business, general business, highway, shopping center, and general industry zoning ordinance to see if they can be consolidated and/or reformulated to make more intuitive and business-friendly commercial districts. We did get feedback from the planning board on this, and the recommendation was just because of the timing issues and all, to give it leave to withdraw without prejudice.
I'll accept that recommendation
Okay, so, is
for a
that
second.
Second?
all in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Just under discussion, since we didn't get a really quick chance, I do want to say that I did refile the order to look and see if we could create a retail center.
Yeah.
Substituting those shopping center orders that were filed in the previous year. So given that they have been refiled with different language, I do want to continue to make progress on it, because I do think that there is real just merit to the economic incentives and benefits it gives to the city by creating a level playing field and a contiguous corridor down there.
So noted. Thank
Yep.
you. So, all in favor of that? We already voted, and then the comments were post-vote. Okay, thank you.
Motion to remove item 12 from the table?
12 and 13, please, as a package.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
So item 12 is a petition from Ovidio Hernandez of 175 Walnut Street for a street vendor license to sell ice cup syrup.
Is he coming to see us, or?
Did we notify him?
And
I went by like 2 times. I went by there.
Was the cart there? Nothing.
Do we have the application?
Well, we gave them until August 3rd, the
Well-
temporary.
I wanted to put it on the agenda
No, I think you
so
should,
that
that's
there was
good.
opportunity to move quickly like we did on the one for the baseball.
Right,
yeah.
did Ryan,
Because I didn't want to hold him up since he came in and he had,
yeah, that presupposes he's coming.
and filed the application, but I don't know because it was done quickly.
Was he asked to come here tonight?
Well, I'm not sure if Ryan got him,
Okay.
because,
Send him a letter or call, or? Can you call him? Can you coordinate with Ryan,
The,
maybe? Or get the application?
but
It's gotta
hang
have
on a
something.
second.
If I get a number, I will call.
There's gotta be something on the application if
Because-
we have it.
Have him over to our next meeting.
There was a
July
little bit of,
28th.
at the moment when I was talking to Ryan, he didn't have it over from the clerk's office yet. Okay, because this was right after the city council meeting.
Well, he shouldn't have gotten
What do you
it
mean?
over.
From the clerk's office. It starts here.
No.
It's not a tennis ball.
I guess so under normal circumstances, it would come to the
Him.
committee.
It would, okay, so after the city we sent it to committee, but then after our city council meeting, the clerk's office, and they've had this clarification about there only being one copy and him not printing anything out. So,
We have photocopiers. but
no,
that's okay.
but I'm saying, in terms of the paper flow, this has been the thing that they worked out. And so it was the next day, because I wanted to move the license one,
Who's done first?
okay? So I wanted to move it, so I asked him to put it on the agenda, and he would go to the clerk's office, get the original one, which would have the
It
application
doesn't
with
even,
it.
I mean, we don't even need an application to copy down a phone number and ask the guy to come in. I mean,
So
Well,
Ryan, you're
I-
listening to this.
I
Please give
don't-
Counselor Lopez
Okay, but
the
all I can
information.
say on that is, I don't know what happened between me sitting down with Ryan on Thursday and today, in that regard.
Did you discuss at any time contacting Mr. Hernandez?
Not specifically. I asked him to put it on the agenda because I wanted to move the license as quickly as possible, even though I didn't have the piece of paper
I think it, I don't
from
know.
our council meeting from Tuesday.
I think it goes without saying, we're supposed to invite Mr. Hernandez
Well,
in,
you're
right?
right, and so I'm assuming he attempted to,
Okay.
but I can't say that I know one way or the other.
Right, all right. He doesn't.
I think so.
he
I'm
can
looking
get
through
one.
the jacket right now because every once in a while, I have had something in front of me that I didn't realize I did.
so motion to reconsider our actions and leave item number 12 on the table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so item.
And we'll add
12
it to our next agenda.
tabled. But before we adjourn, let me look
We
through
still
here
have
to see if
13.
I do have it.
Okay,
Okay? But-
great.
So item 13, ordered that the city solicitor or school department receiver provide a copy of the school department 57 Suffolk Street lease to the city council. My understanding is that we have had that provided to us.
I haven't gotten it. Did you get it?
Okay, so that's,
Did you get one?
okay. So let me make sure that I don't have it sitting on the table right here, okay?
Something like that should have got emailed.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So just, the administrative assistant advised me that he left 2 messages with the applicant, and the application is with her, is in your
Which-
pile.
Which I'm,
In the pile.
It's in the pile.
Looking at
So
right now.
he did attempt
I-
to reach the applicant.
Excellent, thank you,
I
Mr.
thought he
Ryan.
would have, but I couldn't tell you. for-
Well, so
For
that
sure,
answers
but-
that.
Hang
Very
on,
good, very good.
hang on. Okay,
There he is.
Look at that.
okay,
Hand that right over to Mr. Lopez.
oh, okay. And then somebody asked me another question, a copy of the lease.
Did we get the lease?
Okay. I want to be careful,
I'll
because
take
every once in a
one
while,
school
I
department
have
lease
had
or what's
something
behind door
in
number
my
2.
pile.
How about the 700-page contract with United Water? Do we have, or with GDF Sudas? Do we have that?
Jim McDermott said he read on a flight back from Florida once. And he fell asleep at the meeting. Literally,
The history.
the good old days, the good old days.
Oh, just history in this room.
We took that vote,
The
you know,
walls could speak.
a special session of the city council held in the auditorium of Holyoke High School. They had us in a horseshoe, and we took a vote just like that.
Has our administrative assistant advised you as to the contract by any chance in that text? Thank you. I'm not seeing a copy of the school department
So
contract
can we just have
attached.
Mr. Ryan Allen, please, speak to Mr. Zreik and have him email all members of the city council a copy of this?
Motion that
Forthwith,
it be complied with.
forthwith, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to reconsider actions on item number 2,
2, what was the 2?
sewer rate.
2 or 8?
Okay, hang on, let me just,
Okay.
so we're calling 13 complied with and asking Ryan to make sure we get the copies.
Everybody. The whole
Everybody.
council, yeah.
Yes.
It may have been that he was anticipating getting it and it just hasn't arrived yet.
I just
Count-
want to point out that the school department mentioned that they don't have higher, but I asked,
It's month to month.
but I asked
Well,
them to
they
get a
have a-
copy anyway, and when
Yeah. They have a lease, but it's on month to month, yeah.
So I wanted to press it because I thought it was a little time sensitive, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so
Motion
motion to reconsider our action on item 2 for the sewer rate.
Oh, on the sewer rate? No. Oh,
That's
on the sewer
sewer
rate?
rate.
Oh, that's number 2.
That-
Oh, I thought you said something about through 8.
No, I was just
Sewer
noting,
rate, sewer rate.
I was just noting earlier that that was tabled.
Oh, okay.
because-
Motion to reconsider action on number 2, okay,
Yes, and I'll second that.
okay.
All in favor?
No.
Aye.
Aye.
No,
Motion to
The
adjourn.
motion fails. Is there a second?
Made a motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
second,
All in favor?
hold on, we have no other business, right?
Oh,
Okay.
aye.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.